It is the only solution to prevent mass revolution.
This guest today is so interesting. He's built one of the leading AI companies when it comes to taking our human mind and recreating it online.
If any video you see online can be AI generated, how do you know what to trust?
I almost literally hit post on a video that I didn't even create.
Exactly.
What jobs are the very first ones AI is going to take?
Man, I feel like
Interesting.
the most unique thing that you have is your mind. When everyone has the means of this hyper intelligent AI tool, people are going to pay attention to the things that stand out.
Hi, and welcome back to the Big Deal podcast. I'm Codie Sanchez, and this guest today is so interesting. He's built one of the leading AI companies when it comes to taking our human mind and recreating it online. If at any point you have worried about all of this technology coming into your life and how to make sure you are a winner, not a loser in the AI race, this episode is for you. So without further ado, CEO of Delphi. So yesterday, I go on my Instagram, I click on a video, and I'm like, God, I don't remember recording that video. I didn't even catch it. My team had used AI voiceover on me. The only reason I caught it is because my new president was like, your voice inflection sounds weird. I almost literally hit post on a video that I didn't even create. And I think that's just touching the surface with AI. Now, you live in this world every single day. I guess one of my main questions is, do you think it's true that no entrepreneur is worried about AI taking over their jobs as entrepreneurs? Or should everybody be thinking about what AI might take over?
I mean, I think there are two parts of it. Is definitely a certain kind of person who's the doomer, who is absolutely terrified of what's going on. But this isn't the first time there's been something that has caused doomerism. You know, you think about Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos. You know, you watch that show and you're like, oh my God, the world is huge. Life is insignificant. Why should I do anything? And then there's another kind of person who's like, wow, it's actually amazing that I'm alive and I'm empowered to do all these things and like work. And so I think AI is just another thing that people like to create a catastrophe out of. Whereas instead, it's more like, okay, it's a new thing. It's going to change a lot of things. But as humans, we find meaning and there are new ways of working and we don't have to do the things we don't want to do. And we can do more of what we want to do.
I think I fall somewhere in between. Like, I'm simultaneously excited about AI and scared about it. What do you do to not get left behind in a world of AI?
I think you have to start with the end in mind.
Mm.
You know, there's a lot going on today. It can be very easy to, there's a new paper, there's a new prompting method. I think that's actually just fully a waste of time because these are all incremental steps towards what is inevitably a free, pretty much instantaneous, hyper intelligent AI at your fingertips. Like that is the end in mind. And so we're on the path to getting there, but you should be planning for that as the end and not getting distracted with, okay, cool, new metrics. We're going to get there. It's inevitable.
So I'm a super normie. So this morning I'm like, AI for idiots, Codie version. What does somebody who doesn't play in your world at all, we're not even on X, we don't know anything about AI except maybe that we've heard ChatGPT and we've been confused by Sam Altman on TV before. How do we start actually playing with this stuff live? Because you created a really fancy company that does this now, but you probably started with tinkering too. How does an average person tinker with AI today?
I think it's good to know the historical context of AI and how it's grown. For example, when I got into AI in 2014, the coolest thing AI could do was tell you whether a picture was a cat or a dog. And then I remember in 2015, I did a project that predicted whether Trump was happy or sad based on his tweets. And so
Were you right?
Well, yeah, fully right. And it's all pattern recognition. Like AI is just math.
Mm-hmm.
You pass in a bunch of pictures of a cat or a dog. Think about you have a child and you show that child 100 pictures of a dog and 100 pictures of a cat. And then you show him another picture that's either a cat or a dog. He's probably going to know which one it is. That is pretty much AI. It's pattern recognition. And when you start it from that set, you're not as scared because I've seen people who try to start at like level 5 without starting at level 1. And they're like, oh, this is conscious. This is a new kind of being. And you're like, no, it's just math. It's pattern recognition, just as babies are, just as we are. We learn things and we predict things based on our experiences.
Interesting. Okay. So if that's where it started, what's next? Where do you think we're going next?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the end in mind is AI that is hyper intelligent, generating realistic videos, generating infinitely all night, improving itself. And I think if you've seen in the past, whenever there is an era of abundance,
Mm.
you know, there's so much of this one thing. The barrier to entry for creating anything is low. Mediocrity is going to be the norm because anyone can create anything. The pendulum swings and people really start to value curation and trust.
Mm.
And so I'm actually like more bullish on the creator economy and like the individual economy, more bullish than ever, because I really do think that when everyone has the means of this hyper intelligent AI tool, people are going to pay attention to the things that stand out.
Mm. Will it be harder to stand out?
100%. Easier than ever to get distribution, easier than ever to be really good at something, harder than ever to be the best. And so I think 80-20 likely becomes 95-5, where the 5% really reap the benefits of the 95.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, you kind of think about it. I remember Naval had a quote that was like, "The robot army is already here. It's just inside your computers." And so in Armageddon or some of these, Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, you think, okay, there's going to be this robot army and we invested in figures, so it could be, and they're going to be out there, but it's not so much that. It's in so many words, they're inside of your computer today. And the war is sort of who can utilize them to have the highest impact.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people think, oh, AI can do all of this stuff. It means I get to work less.
Hmm.
I actually think it's the opposite. I actually think you need to work more in order to stand out because AI, you can only reap the benefits of AI if you have something worth scaling. AI can only build off of a foundation that you have spent time building. If you haven't built that foundation, you're just going to get a plateau that everyone else in the world is getting.
What would
And
be like an example of that today?
an example of that is, I could go to ChatGPT and say, generate this SEO optimized blog post on AI.
Yep.
And anyone in the world can do that. And everyone in the world will do that. You can imagine SEO is not going to mean anything anymore because everyone's going to be doing this. But since I've spent time learning AI and learning the nuances, I can still leverage ChatGPT to help me write a blog post. But I can also add my own nuance so it stands out. It's building off of my own experience versus what ChatGPT generates, which is the average of the internet.
Hmm. I guess it's not that dissimilar to if you think about it today. Yeah, you get a lot of emails in your inbox, and it's become easier than ever to send emails in your inbox. And yet, subject line matters more than ever. So, like, in order to stand out, you're just going to have to be more creative because that first act of creation is no longer the barrier to entry. Like, I saw this graphic today that was like, three levels, and it was a bow and arrow, a guy shooting a bow and arrow, and the top level was what most people do, and it's like 93%, and it's just a guy holding a bow and arrow, like he never actually shoots the target, and then the next level was like, I don't know, 50%, and it's like shoot once, miss, and the 1% are the people that shoot 452 times, and so now it'll be a lot easier to actually shoot 452 times, but harder to get to the 1% that actually matters.
Yeah, and you need to build the character to deal with those 450 failures
Mm.
and, push through. And I'm glad you mentioned email because we talk about thinking with the end in mind.
Mhm.
If you think about what happens with email when every single person is using an AI agent to send hyper personalized emails to your inbox every single day, people are not going to check their emails anymore. I actually think email is going to be a thing of the past. Because if you just think about it, I'm already getting spammed on my email. I'm already getting called by these random AI agents, and people are hopping on this opportunity. But what likely is the future of email is something that you don't even check. You have this AI thing that knows you and how you speak and how you think about things, and it only surfaces to you what the opportunities you care about are. And that sounds great to me. I don't know about you. I hate looking at my email.
That is true. I use it increasingly less and less.
Yeah.
But then how do we get to people? Will real life become so much more important because email has become sort of bastardized?
I think it goes back to doing the work to make yourself a unique and interesting and valuable person.
Mm.
Because I imagine in the world where there are AI agents communicating with each other, and an AI agent is something, an LLM or an AI that can take action.
Mhm.
It knows you and it knows the value that you can bring to others. And it is going to convince other AI agents that, hey, this person has great stuff. But that's why the foundation is important because you need to have that great stuff worth offering other people.
Interesting. So by an AI agent, you basically mean when I get an email in my inbox and I can tell it's like made by a computer, it's
Yeah.
like, hi, Cody S. dot comma. I'd like to sell you XYZ service. Please reach out at this time. I loved your most recent Instagram post, but you can tell it's somehow copy and pasted.
You can always
This is
tell.
an AI agent, basically.
That would actually probably just be someone typing into ChatGPT and copying and pasting.
Mm,
An AI agent would be like a step further where it actually scheduled something on your calendar. So
mm.
it's, multiple steps of reasoning, not just one thing, but one thing you respond and then it schedules time or it takes an action.
Interesting. So do you think how far away are we from outsourced virtual assistants being irrelevant by AI, let's say?
I think it's already happening. I think it's just a matter of adoption. And you talked about the Terminator. People just have this fear of AI. Like they're just default. Oh my God, I've seen so many movies. This must mean it's bad. And I personally hope to see more positive outlooks on AI and what
Mhm.
it can do and what this like post AI world could look like for all of us.
So basically, like right now today, I have virtual assistants for many of our companies. We might pay them $800 a month to $3,000 a month to do varying routinized tasks
Yep.
such as scheduling, travel, email management, etc. Do you think right now today there are AI agents that are better and how much cheaper than 800 to 3,000 a month?
Well, it's kind of like power law. Maybe you have like a really, really good assistant who knows you super well and can be proactive.
Mhm.
I don't think the agents we have right now are like that.
Yeah.
But at a bare bone assistant that can manage your inbox and even like schedule traveling for you, and it doesn't require that much personalization to your life and your nuances, yes, it's there. People are already doing it.
And in a year, will it be so good, it will know me so well that it will make even somebody I've worked with for 2 or 3 years seem less relevant?
Yes. And I think personalization and proactivity are the two things that I think over the next year are really going to be the things that take AI from a nice to have to, wow, this is ingrained in my life. I don't have to think about it. It's reaching out to me. It knows me and knows the way I respond to words. And I think that's when it becomes widely adopted.
Interesting, because it is actually hard to teach people to care, I think.
Yeah.
My dad always said you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And so when you have employees, as you do too, at some point there's just this like give a fuckness
Yeah.
that is often missing. And if AI has found a way where give a fuckness doesn't actually matter, but it's just math and processing, that is going to be so valuable.
Totally. And I think, hiring is still a play, but you just want to hire missionaries instead of mercenaries, people who do give a fuck.
Interesting. And so, do you think in the future you'll just have fewer, smarter humans who work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I tell everyone we hire, I want a sub 50 person public company. And I think we can. You can do the job of 10 people. And specifically, AI really benefits generalists
Mm.
because it allows anyone to be a polymath. Before, to be a polymath, you really had to be like a special kind of person. But now, AI democratizes access to specialization. You can become a specialist in a couple days. I don't know anything about pricing or branding, but I've become a branding and pricing specialist just by using OpenAI's latest $200 per month model, which sounds ridiculous, $200 per month for a model, but it's like having a consultant at your fingertips that has a PhD in branding or pricing.
Yeah. And explain what a polymath is to anybody that doesn't know.
Polymath is someone who is an expert in multiple things. They can context switch, they can be a great front end engineer, and then play the violin. And then they can also be an amazing football player.
Yeah. So this is kind of just like what was that movie where you took the pill and all of a sudden you became superhuman?
Limitless, yeah.
This is like
It,
an
it is
enablement of
limitless,
that.
100%.
Interesting. So we won't, well, theoretically, it is the same thing because the pill didn't make you buffer or stronger or whatever, but it did make you have this mental capacity that seemed absolutely unrivaled.
Totally. And I think learning and education, I personally think, is one of the most optimistic outcomes of AI because you see something, Bloom's Two Sigma. It's a study that shows that those who have a private tutor are more likely to succeed in life by like two standard deviations. And obviously, those who have private tutors, you need money. And it's just not something that most people have access to. But AI allows that one on one learning experience for any kind of subject. And I think when the world is more educated, ultimately in results in new innovation, higher quality of living. So I think it's very, very, very positive thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is that also the study? I saw something come out yesterday on X about Alpha School in Austin, which is Elon's new school. Did you see that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And basically, Alpha School came out with like 2 or 3 standard deviations of scoring by their students than a traditional school, which is wild because that thing's only been in existence for like, I don't know, less than 5 years, I would
Yep.
say. And it is essentially my understanding, I don't know if it's different, is that it is individualized education per student that mandates about 2 hours of active learning assisted by AI per day. And then as soon as you get done your programming, whatever you're supposed to get done for that day, that would be like, oh, you get through your history test, you get through your mathematic tests. For the rest of the day, you get to use your curiosity and dive deeper.
Yep.
And so these students are actually, they were a little petri dish. We weren't sure if that sounded like a good idea. I mean, back in the day, somebody had told me, yeah, Cody, you can work for 2 hours a day at school, and then you can kinda go fuck off and do whatever you want for the rest of the day. I'd be like, "This seems like a bad idea." And yet they kinda tested it and it's working,
Yeah,
which is fascinating.
it is. And it's both active learning and accountability and personalization. Like think about online courses. Online courses aren't doing so well. Course completion rate is in the low. And it's because they have this assumption that the 20 modules, I need to experience them in the same order that you need to experience them. But we're very different. We learn differently. And so the ordering of how you learn is different. And I mean, that's kind of like what we do. We have authors who have converted their books into these interactive learning experiences. And instead of just someone reading a 400-page book, it's almost like a choose your own adventure. You choose what you want to learn, and then you get that proactivity on how it applies to your life. I mean, how many times have you read a book and you're like, wow, I learned so many things from this book, like this book right here.
Yeah,
And you don't actually apply it.
for
And
sure.
so I think active learning is really what turns learning into something that is applicable and people can actually measurably get better in their lives.
Explain that a little more, because I think you guys are one of the best in the world at it at Delphi, and increasingly your roster of, big time thinkers and famous people who are using it is incredible. But traditional education would be like, okay, we have a curriculum. Here's what we go through every single day. You can either self do it yourself at your own pace, or you can do it with the class, let's say, but you go from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4.
Yep.
What does education look like with AI now? How exactly will that change?
Totally. I mean, people are already using ChatGPT to learn, like a lot
Yeah.
of things. I am. Uh, if you look at Wikipedia, which has documented all of human knowledge,
Mhm.
very easy way to learn something. Wikipedia exists, but does anyone actually learn through Wikipedia? We read books, we watch YouTube videos, and I think there's an insight there about how we inherently trust things that come from human. It's just like a human need. So the next version of learning is a outcome like becoming a millionaire and learning a little bit about yourself, like almost like an initial survey, and then having this guided learning path over the next 30 days to make sure you understand the concepts that are relevant to you, to make sure you're applying them, and then evaluating whether you truly understand those concepts, and then continuous management until it becomes a habit. Could probably leverage concepts from, James Clear's Atomic Habits to see, how can you take a book and actually embed it in someone's mind for practice.
Interesting. So, like currently, let's say right now, we teach people to buy businesses. So they go through a course and curriculum that's, step 1 through 10 and how to buy a business, but it's linear.
Hmm.
And in this future world, and we're using Delphi for a bunch of stuff in there, so I'm really excited about it. It would be like, okay, Cody, you tell me a little bit about yourself, and you rate, I don't know, at beginner level for business buying. So here's like all the opportunity areas that you're not very good at, as evidenced by the questions that you took.
Yep.
And so because of that, you know a lot about accounting.
Yep.
But you actually know nothing about how to communicate with sellers. You know nothing about how to actually find deals. So instead of wasting any of your time on accounting, you already passed that by. You're going to go straight to these other things, and you're going to score them as you progress. And then finally, when you've reached like the completion level that we think is appropriate, you'll get your little certificate, but also there'll be some sort of continuous learning option like a Duolingo, but tailored specifically to you.
Exactly. Exactly. We take a lot of inspiration from Duolingo in terms of, how can we make something learning that's engaging and fun and incentivized?
Interesting. And so in the future, will we sit in classrooms with chalkboards with teachers, everybody teaching at the same level, or is this going extinct?
Well, I do think the in-person experience is definitely always important. And I don't want to live in a world where we devalue that. I think AI is about providing access where previously there may not have been access. So maybe there is a classroom, you can communicate with other students, but then in the off time, you know, questions that you may be embarrassed to ask in class, or a private tutoring session. So you show up in class the next day more knowledgeable, you can participate more. That is a future that I'm more excited about. There may be a world where humans don't value in-person communication, but I just think that that's a kind of habit change that is going to take decades and even centuries to really manifest, that we
Yeah.
don't value in-person times with humans.
Right. Yeah, because at least for now, probably the thing that's super repetitive and easy to replicate is the knowledge. It's
Yep.
like 1 + 1 = 2 no matter what math teacher you have. But what doesn't standardize is like, oh man, every time that teacher sits down with me and says, like, hey, I can tell you're struggling. It's
Yep.
okay. You're doing a great job. Go take a walk outside. Go get a little vitamin D. You need a little coffee here? Like that almost mothering or human EQ component will probably be one of the things that computers are sort of last to integrate. Although they could at some point too say like, "Good job, buddy."
But they could, but same as the Wikipedia thing. I think inherently there is just like this unknown psychological thing where I am talking to a human.
Yeah.
I'm not learning from Wikipedia, which is a summary of that human, or their AI, which is good access while I can have them, or maybe I'm too embarrassed to tell them the thing that I want to tell them.
Mm,
But in the end, it is the human, and we've seen that behavior with Delphi, where someone is learning from someone's digital mind, and then ends up wanting to meet them even more. It's
yeah.
like, oh, like I want to get to know this person. I really, really resonate with the things that they say.
It's true because if you think about it, you know, right now, when I meet somebody, let's say, who's read the book or followed some of our content, we already have this like parasocial relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then if they were able to actually have me communicate direct with them and answer questions, they would really feel like they know me. And then if I'm able to like get a bunch of information, let's say from them, so that every engagement we had, we got to know them too, that would be kind of interesting and doesn't exist today.
Totally. And you're a big creator. You're pretty well known. So parasocial relationships are pretty common with you. I think parasocial relationships going into the business world is pretty interesting. And what I mean by that is, there's that leaked email from Mark Zuckerberg to Peter Thiel, where he says, like, I think my reputation with millennials and Gen Z are particularly important. And then a month later, he has a perm and a chain and like
Forgot about that.
really, really caring about his brand. And he's a very calculating guy. Like, none of that is by accident.
Yep.
And so I think the insight that he has that I have seen with having my own clone is people connect with people and less so with brands, like nameless brands. And so from the business owner perspective, I think the founder-led influencer, the founder-led marketing is going to continue to become more as this idea of parasocial relationships with business owners starts to be more commonplace.
It's so true. Like if you have a business today and you don't have an ability for your customers to relate individually with you or
Mhm.
whoever you have as the face of your business, you're probably missing out on a big monetary opportunity. Like,
Totally.
why do you think they put Jared for Subway? And that one could go a little sideways, but it's because they needed a face to go with the brand. We
Yep.
don't associate with corporate logos the same way we do with humans. It's a really good
Totally.
point.
Yeah.
Explain what a clone is at Delphi, because I imagine people immediately think of like, I think that movie with Joaquin Phoenix where he has Scarlett Johansson in his ear and they become best buds and then she's best buds with everybody and his heart's broken. What is this clone that you guys do?
Yeah, it's definitely not her. And then people love to reference that movie. I think it's like another dystopian movie, so I don't love it. Uh, and we're also moving away from the word clone because it gives that dystopian
What do you
take.
call them?
Digital mind. Like
Okay.
what we're doing really is the most unique thing that you have is your mind.
Mhm.
Your expertise, your experiences, and up until now, the way that you scale that mind has a cap. You can only
Yeah.
be in one place at one time. You write content to scale your mind, but it's not you. It lacks the personalization. There's no way to scale personalization.
Yeah.
So a digital mind is something that understands your tone, your style, your thinking, allows you to scale your thoughts like a book, but is bidirectional and personalized, like talking with you would be.
Yeah, I mean, you could even think about it, in a non-dystopian way. Like, let's say you have an accounting practice right now, and you have a process and systems that you use for every single person you input. And then at one point, you're like, I'm so overwhelmed. I can't do anybody else's accounting. I need to hire somebody else. And then
Hmm.
I have to train them on everything that I know about accounting. And so I hire another person, and then I hire another person. And that's how we get, Ernst and Young and these big, huge companies.
Yep.
Well, in the future, part of that can be, hey, I have all these systems and processes. Every time I onboard a client, I don't actually hire a new person. I just have them interface with my AI. And so I've essentially become not only superhuman mind, but superhuman hands because as opposed to having to hire thousands, I have now individually created a business that is based on one sort of data set, me.
Yeah, and think about when you scale to thousands, at least from what I hear, the biggest problem when you scale as a company is that people stop making decisions in line with your culture
Yep.
and how you do things. Like that's where things really break. And so Sam Altman talks about the one person $1 billion tech company, but maybe there is the one person $1 billion company in general. It doesn't necessarily need to be a software company.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and also I think if I remember when I first started a business, one of my favorite mentors said to me, he's like, before you even start, I'm going to tell you what your biggest problem is going to be. I already know. And I'm like, perfect. Tell me. And he's like, no, no, I'm going to write it down. He put it on a little piece of paper. He's like, I'm going to put it in an envelope. I'm going to date it over the part that I zipped it so you can see that I haven't changed it. Then when you have your first problem, come sit down with me. We'll talk about it. And so I remember I started the business. I'm like, all right, whatever, weirdo. So I go, I start the business, sit back down with him later. I'm like, I have this huge issue. It's a total nightmare. He's like, wait, pulls out the envelope, hands me the envelope, and he goes, before you tell me, I want you to remember this. I still have it. And I said, he said, what's your issue? And I was like, well, this person's doing XYZ thing. And he opens up and he just says, the best thing about your business, the people. The worst thing about the business, the people.
Yep.
And so that is very true. Every time you get in business, scaling humans is really, really hard.
Yep.
And so I think this will be a huge unlock for business leaders if they think about it. That's why I did like that idea of like entrepreneurs aren't as scared about AI because they're thinking about how to use it, not how to get used by it.
And even if they want to hire people, it makes their team more effective. We have CEOs
Yep.
whose teams like love the clone because they don't want to bother the CEO, and they're using it to okay, is this how he would make or she would make decisions?
What do you think is the most interesting thing happening in AI right now that most people are not aware of? Like today, right now.
I really pay attention to the psychological impacts of AI,
Hmm.
and so I find these video generation models really interesting because again, I always think in the end in mind. Like, what does this mean for our digital behavior? And if if any video you see online can be AI generated or any picture and it's near perfect, how do you know what to trust? People are either going to trust everything or default it's going to be I'm not trusting that. I'm not trusting that. Uh, so I really think it's interesting as these things get better. Like, will social media still hold a role? Like, what technology needs to be available to make social media something that we can still use? Probably some sort of like trust authentication layer where it is like this is AI generated, this is true, this is false, and you have these companies like Polymarket and Kalshi. They are these companies where you can bet on events, and I don't know how
Oh,
they
yeah.
validate whether an event actually happened or not, but they have found a way. So I think it's really interesting what the future looks like of trust, and are we going to be okay with not knowing that something is true or false, or are we going to want to know like this is a deep fake, or my voice was stolen and now it's being used to call my grandma to send her money. So I think that's a little scary, and I think there needs to be solutions around that.
It's a great point. I was off Twitter for like 4 days this week, and all of a sudden I came back and it's like the CIA confirms there are astral projected huge beings on Mars that came to the US that built the pyramids. Did you see this? And then there's like some pillars
I
underneath the
fully bought
pyramids.
that. I
Did
told
you?
my sister, I was like, this is so cool, this changes everything, and she's like, that's not real.
Yeah, I'm so interested. So but my immediate take was like, okay, I guess maybe. I don't know. Like, but what are you gonna do? Because there's so many wild things coming out nonstop. You're like, for sure, JFK assassination happened by the CIA. I have no idea how to prove any of that. So what does happen in the future in order to know if things are truth or not? Do you think that the next biggest AI company is actually just is it just authentication? Will there be some stamp, or is AI smarter than a stamp?
I think it's such a difficult problem to solve because you get into like political bias and like what's actually right, what's true and what's false. And then you have like the Orwellian 1984 view where if someone has control over what's true, then like they can control the narrative of history. So it would require creating like an unbiased AI that has access to just like the stream of the internet in real time. And maybe it's something like what I mentioned is the future of email, where the future browser is something that can filter things that it knows are true or has some like importance in your life. Because like you said, we see all these crazy things these days on television and on social media, and it's just like, oh, cool.
Could be.
Yeah. What? And just like
Aliens.
don't care anymore. Like it's kind of
Right.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, think about what they would have to do to break through and make me really concerned. I mean, they've
Yeah.
literally released multiple times that aliens exist from the government. And now there's this thing about CIA and the pyramids. And you're like, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'm hungry. And
Yeah.
so
It's just
what
like
does that look like?
they're aliens. Like, okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
we need breakfast.
Yeah.
I guess the other question for you there is like, what books would you read for you to understand the negative consequences of AI? And what books would you read to understand what could be possible positively? Because I think it's useful to see both sides of the coin.
Totally. There's obviously AI superpowers. I think by Kai-Fu Lee.
Okay.
That's more on the negative consequences. And then all of Kurzweil's books are great because he was so ahead of his time. I actually got into AI reading his book How to Create a Mind in 2013, where he talks about how you can leverage computer science to recreate someone's mind. And yeah, it was reading that book and then using LLMs in 2021 that made me realize, wait, the technology he was describing in that book is pretty much LLMs. So this guy was really ahead of his time. I think
Explain what an LLM is for
so.
anybody listening.
LLM is a large language model. We talk about AI being just a pattern recognizer. So an LLM is just like a huge pattern recognizer trained on all of the words on the internet and can see a pattern in a sentence and predict what the most likely next word is. So when I tell you old McDonald had, what's the next word?
A farm.
Yes. So you're an LLM. You just did that. And we might be LLMs. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But then the Fourth Industrial Revolution, I think, is a good book on all the potential good things of AI. I think Peter Diamandis is very optimistic about AI, and his books really go into like AI with biotech and flying cars. If you really want to like walk away feeling hyped about the future, definitely check out his books.
I like it. Would you also throw in there some of the dystopian fiction and like the utopian nonfiction? Would you throw in there like a 1984? Would you throw in like the Diamond Age? What else should people be reading, even to like break your frame of how you think about AI today?
I think it's a great point. I think with AI, you almost have to like forget everything you've ever learned and like try to rethink things from first principles, from the ground up. Diamond Age is great because it talks about it has that personalized tutor, the illustrated primer that can
Yeah.
grow with you and teach you things. And I think that's exciting. And then 1984 is great because it's like the consequences of what could be.
Yeah.
And I think knowing the consequences of what could be allows you to be intentional about the decisions we make today to make sure that is not what happens.
Yeah. Actually, Diamond Age is one of my favorite books. Did you know that is the most uh, often cited book by tech CEOs for their daughters?
Really?
Which kind of tracks because
Yeah.
it is about this, kind of magical education book that you give to that's given to a young woman who kind of has no prospects and awful things happen to her and then her life changes.
It's the promise of having a mentor or having someone who cares about you and can guide you.
Interesting. When you mentioned something weird that I want to go on a tangent on, which is, are we LLMs? What does that mean?
So in Kurzweil's book, How to Create a Mind, he describes the mind as a collection of building blocks and how complex intelligence results from that collection, that organization. So it's a hierarchy of pattern recognizers. On the low level, you have pattern recognizers that recognize the shapes in letters. So M, I, L. that gets fed into higher level pattern recognizers where it's sentences. And then there's paragraphs, and then there's meaning. And at the highest level, there's consciousness. And you're not aware of all of these lower level pattern recognizers. And so, what is also a pattern recognizer? An LLM.
Mm.
It takes inputs and it has outputs, it recognizes things. And so, something that I think about a lot is like, are we just a hierarchy of GPT-10s? And what we're experiencing is consciousness, similar to how he described the mind working. And I also think about that a lot in terms of dreams. Because if you see some of
Mm.
these AI generated videos, I don't know how vivid your dreams are. I have very vivid dreams, but these dreams mimic exactly how these AI videos look.
Interesting.
And so it's like when we're asleep, maybe the LLMs don't have as much power. And so they are lower level LLMs. So, anyways, it sounds a little crazy. I think even if it's true, it's similar to the cosmos idea of like, oh, we're so insignificant, or the simulation hypothesis where what if we're all in a simulation? It's like, okay, we're LLMs. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, who
Like, you,
cares?
you still got to make meaning out of your life. You still got to work hard. You still got to do good things. Like, so what?
Yeah. Yeah, so what keeps you out of what I think happens with some people when they start talking about this, which is like becoming an existentialist, and you're like, "Why does this matter? You know, what is life? What is meaning?" How do you drive meaning from something super technical like AI and the belief that at some point, like, will AI just do all our work for us? Will we not need to work anymore? And will we live in a utopian world in which AI does everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have two kinds of people in this world. You have people who there will likely be universal basic income. I like that's is the only solution I see to what's about
Wow.
to happen. So many
Really?
people are going to lose their jobs, but a lot of people, I imagine the listeners of this podcast are like ambitious people who like want to win. Uh, that's not the people I'm talking about. I'm talking people who go to work and they don't necessarily love their job, and they would much rather like spend time with friends and family, be creative, maybe just find joy in things like that. And then the more interesting thing for me, and I think listeners of this audience, is for people who still want to like win and find meaning, like what does that look like? And I think that's where really starting with the end in mind and thinking about the psychology of humanity in a world where mediocrity is abundant and the barrier to entry is super low. What does that mean? It means we have to work harder to stand out. We have to think about our relationships even more. Customer service matters more. Treating people with respect matters more. Brand and creating something unique matters more. So for how do I stay motivated? I very much believe in what I'm doing. And I think I have a lot of good motivational sources that keep me going. And I just go back to the Wikipedia example where I truly believe humans value humans. And even when AI is very good, we care for one another in some way or form.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. They're building a Skims store on the street. I don't know if you saw it. And I saw this Instagram the other day about taking every single item from Skims collection, sorry, Kim, and comparing it to the Amazon basics, which are like somewhere between 200 to 400% cheaper. And yet they were explaining what was actually the material of the clothing. So in order to decide if one was better or not. And the moral of the story is like almost everything that you can get from Skims, let's say 80% of it, Pareto's principle, 80% of it you can buy online at Amazon that appears to look exactly the same and be the same material. But it's about 200 to 400% less. And yet, Skims sells out of almost every single collection.
Yep.
And so why? Because brand matters more than ever
It's
in
the
a
most
world.
important thing.
Right.
Status, associating what like communities, what you want to be, what you want to associate yourself with.
Right. So in the future, you might not need to differentiate as much your actual product, but you certainly will the packaging. It goes back to the Tiffany's model,
And who
tale
you
as
are.
old as time.
And who you are.
Explain that more.
This goes back to the Mark Zuckerberg point, like where I think Kim Kardashian, a lot of people look up to her. Like she is a status symbol. And I think as a business owner, uh, especially as you have a lot of get rich quick people who are building these like shitty AI tools, and people are gonna try them like, damn, this sucks. Oh, it's because the founder had poor intentions. And I think people will start to evaluate the people behind the products more so than they do right now.
So, in a world in which AI makes everything easy, the thing that's hard to replicate is you and your own ethics.
Yes, and I think it's a hard thing to work on. Like, how do you work on yourself
Oof.
and your own ethics? And I personally remember when I was working on my first startup, and first startup is really hard. I was in a dark place, super lonely, and literally spending 3 weeks just like writing my stream of consciousness thoughts,
Hmm,
like really understanding who I am and what I cared about, and coming out the other side and having a very clear understanding of who I wanted to be,
hmm.
and how to catch myself when I'm slipping.
Interesting. Your first, you've had a couple shots on goal to startup land. This one is appearing to be very successful. There'll be some fun announcements in that in the coming months.
Mhm.
But what do you mean when you say that your first one was really hard and you were in a deep place? What happened?
So when I quit my first job to start a company, I followed a common piece of advice in Silicon Valley, which I now completely disagree with, which is just like you can start a company for the sake of it, throw spaghetti at a wall, iterate towards an idea. And I think that's really dumb because one, startups are super hard. And the only thing that's motivating you through that 7 days a week, if you really are passionate about what you're working on, and two, if everyone is throwing spaghetti at the wall, what's left? Like, what is left to work on? Like, all the low hanging fruit of ideas I think have been grabbed, and the only ideas worth pursuing take a long time to really like manifest and flesh out. And so, my first startup, I left, didn't really have a plan. I was a
Hmm.
solo founder, didn't really have any mentors in my life. And I also didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. I had no
Mm,
foundation.
mm,
And an analogy I tell every person who joins Delphi, which they laugh at because it's kind of like dad analogy vibe. But bamboo in its first year of life is only 1 foot tall, and then after that first year, it grows super fast and it doesn't fall. And it's because that it built that foundation. And I felt like in my first startup, I hadn't spent the time building the foundation. And so while built this startup, Friday AI Assistant, got like micro acquired, not something crazy, minorly successful. I don't view that as a success. I view it as a great learning experience for a period where found out what my foundation was, found out what I cared about, found out what drove me, and guided me towards my next thing, which was okay, I need to find a co founder and learn from someone great. And that's why I moved to Open Store to work for Keith Boy and met my co founder there.
interesting. Would you not do another company again without a co-founder?
I don't think I'm gonna start another company after this. I think this is the one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think
As an
having a
investor, great
co-founder.
answer.
Yeah, no, I think this is the one, and I can go into all reasons for why I say that. But my co-founder is amazing. It's like a marriage. We have the same values. We care about the same things. We're very different. I'm go 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 fast, break things. He's like an infrastructure engineer, so very detail oriented. So that complementary skill set, grounded on the same values, is has been huge for us as a company.
How does one go and find a like, how would you go and find a co-founder that aligns with you? What's the framework?
I don't know if I have a framework that's repeatable. I can just say that my mentality was okay, Keith Boy is a super successful founder and investor. He has this kind of crazy mindset about work where, you got to work 7 days a week. The movie Whiplash is like a great movie, which is, I personally love it. We make all of our new hires watch it. And so I was like, okay, the type of person that's going to go move to Miami, which isn't a proven out tech scene, to go work for Keith is someone that is open to this work ideology and someone who's open to risk, because moving to Miami is just like, why would you do that if you work in tech? So that's why I ended up working at that company. And Sam and I initially were super competitive. Like, we did not like each other
Wow.
because we wanted to be the best at the company. But then Sam Altman has this blog where the best way to determine if someone could be a good co-founder is to go on a high stakes travel trip with them. So Sam and I went to Santo Domingo with very little research of like the vibe of Santo Domingo. It's not really a touristy place.
Uh-uh.
And we definitely had some high stakes situations that resulted in us being like, you know what? I think I think this could work out.
That's a great idea, actually. It's
Yeah,
probably a great idea for dating too.
totally.
Like, if you're gonna
Totally.
date somebody, skip the 2-year process to figure out if you like each other and go do something really, really hard, the 2 of you together for an extended period
With no plans.
with no plans
Just
and see what
so yeah,
happens.
yeah. It was great.
Interesting. Yeah, that coulda gone really bad.
Yeah, could have. It almost did, yeah.
Yeah, Santo Domingo's a little sketchy. I've been there before.
Yeah.
Um, you said something that's wild to me. As an insider in AI, on the forefront of what's happening, you think the future of UBI, universal basic income, is almost guaranteed.
I almost feel like it is the only solution to prevent mass revolution because people are going to lose their jobs. Not everyone is like a type A person. I don't know if you can teach type A. Maybe it is an educational thing and maybe the illustrated primer and having a personalized mentor, more people can become type A, but I think people are just not like that. And so, what is the alternative? They need enough to sustain their life. And maybe we have nuclear energy, and maybe it doesn't even cost money to have energy. Maybe we have vertical farms, and food is free. So I think that's the cool thing. And Peter Diamandis talks about this a lot, where all of these technological inflection points are happening right now. And I think it's a great time for biotech to be working well
Mm.
and for energy to be working well because for AI to really work in our society, we need some of these other things figured out as well.
Yeah, I'm such a traditionalist in some ways, but it seems like there's a lot of studies that say humans without purpose are not happy. That actually you have a higher likelihood of dying post-retirement
Hmm.
for no physical difference in that you don't have a reason to wake up any longer.
Yep.
That also people who work versus those who do not work are happier than those who do not work. That actually there is this, sort of 7 million young men in the country who are choosing to opt out of the workforce today
Yeah,
and thus have deaths of despair. So, what happens to society if we're given income, but we're not needed? Don't you worry about that?
I do. But if you think about human history, when we didn't have like all of these jobs, engineer, SEO specialist, what was the meaning that people had? It was really their communities.
Mhm.
What you can do for your family, what you can do for the community around you, um, art and creativity. And so I think one, AI democratizes creativity. Anyone can be a movie director. I personally think that's awesome because I've always had dreams to like create a Christopher Nolan like movie. I don't have the skill set to do it, but maybe with AI I can try something. And I think that's personally very exciting.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the community, I think maybe we'll go back to like a community-based society, which I think people are usually happier when they have a community and they're not just adding value to the shareholders, but they're adding value to the people they love.
Interesting. Um, do you let's go tactical here for a second.
Yeah.
If AI is going to take jobs, but people still need them pre UBI, let's create some bridge between the two. What jobs are the very first ones AI is going to take?
Man, I feel like my answer to this has changed so much. It changes, I think, almost every month.
Mhm.
For a while, I thought it was software engineering
Mhm.
because, well, I think actually software engineering in the way it is today, I think is is not going to be a thing because you already have things like Lovable and these other companies where you can generate a website or app just in like a few seconds. And I think the important thing will be nuance and taste, like making the experience good, making the design good. If you're a system architect and you want to build a scalable database solution, you have to have that kind of knowledge to make it beyond just the AI slop of build a website that can tell people their finances.
Right.
So I think software engineering in the way that it is today, for sure. Consulting, 100%. Like McKinsey, all of those big consulting firms, I don't know how they are thinking about things internally, but you know, doing research and creating a report and creating a PowerPoint deck is almost like the easiest thing you can do with AI, especially with OpenAI's newest model, O1 and then O3, where it is so good. And you can just like pass in everything about your business and the problem you're trying to solve, and it will give you like a pretty good one pager on like what you need to do to solve that.
So if there's a business owner listening right now that has problems in their business, one of the things they could do today to implement AI is go to OpenAI, use these two more premium models, and try to run every single problem they have through their new co-founder, which is AI.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my dad to use it. Yeah.
Interesting. God, I cannot imagine my mother or father using AI right now.
You really got to teach them. You really got to sit
W-
down with them and
What's
teach
your
them.
what are your step function process to teach somebody who's never used ChatGPT how to do it?
It's hard. I think one, starting with the foundations, which we talked about, like this is just math and this is the evolution of AI, and then just like when your parents ask you a question, like they usually do, I just send them ChatGPT. Like ask it. And they're like, "Oh, wow." And then they start to use it more and more, and they start to get creative for how they're using it. And I think the key thing for learning how to use these AI tools right is knowing that it is fully based on your own creativity. Inputs lead to outputs.
Mm,
And so there aren't some strict rules. We're in the very early days of prompt engineering. And so that's why I think unlearning most things that you know and coming in with the mind of a child, where you're like really curious and you're trying different things, like what would happen if I just paste my entire Twitter history into this model and ask if it thinks that my Twitter content is good. Or just like getting creative in the types of data that you can put in there and seeing if it works and seeing what you can do to improve it.
yeah. And prompt engineering basically meaning the questions that you ask actually become their own version of sort of, in some way, code or writing code. Because instead of writing code in a traditional sense, the way to use this is by the questions that you ask.
Yeah, I almost think that there will be, Robert Cialdini, he wrote the Persuasion and
Yeah.
Influence, which is how do you say words that get other people to do what you want? I imagine there'll be like a Robert Cialdini for AI. It's the same thing. Like you're prompting me, I'm prompting you. And similarly, like we're prompting AI to get what we want, influence it, persuade it to give us really, really good results.
Interesting. Okay. I want to go back really quickly too. Uh, we talked about jobs that AI will kill. We think it's software and engineering first. We think consulting next. What
Yep.
are the other top three to lead to the top five?
I think anything that is not relationship oriented,
Hmm.
um, like you can go on Upwork and like get all these one-off jobs.
Yeah.
I think AI is a much better tool because the relationship doesn't matter there.
Mm,
Now, I do think power law comes into play here, where the difference between, okay, let's use AI to give us this graphic, to like the best of the best. Like we're working with Pentagram right now on our rebrand, and they are working with them. I'm like, oh my God, the bar is so high.
yeah.
The difference between like good and excellent is just like enormous. Where the difference between like okay and good is not as wide.
Mm. That's such a good way to think about it. So it's kind of so it's engineers, it's consultants, then it's what would I even call that? Like outsourced service-based people online,
And who are not
tech-based
the best.
services who are
This
not
is
the
why I said
best.
80-20 turns into 95-5 because the best actually can scale what makes them the best,
Yeah.
which is why it's actually the bar is higher and you got to work harder if you want to compete.
Yeah, but it's a great point because you're right, actually. The best actually think super asymmetrically. So
Hmm.
they're not linear at all.
Totally.
They're like, your new branding is this. I think we should look at cotton candy. Plus his hair reminds me of a wave. And they throw together things that AI just would not be able to connect the
And
dots.
they ask questions too that make you rethink your assumptions.
Hmm, interesting. And that at this point is something that AI is not capable of.
I think you can program it to be capable of that, but and I have tried. I've used AI for branding, but it's just like the difference is large both in the quality, but I also like the fact that I'm building this relationship with branding people who are the best in their craft. Like it makes me feel good. Like wow, I know these people and like they're amazing and I
Yeah.
love chatting with them.
Yeah. How do you talk somebody into using more AI that doesn't think they need to today? And the reason that I would frame that is sort of like I think about a lot of my employees right now. And as a business owner, of course, you want people to use more AI because then you get more leverage out of all your people at a lower dollar amount. But there's like a deeper demand I have for them,
Hmm.
which is a realization that those who use AI and are able to integrate it will be able to continue in the workforce on a go forward basis for my company and for others. And those who don't, won't.
Yep.
And so I feel like kind of this visceral need to shake some people and go, you guys, either you figure this out or you won't have a space
Hmm.
here in the future. But I feel this inherent friction between those who are willing to do it and those who just, it's almost emotional and won't.
Yeah, and then we've seen this with our product. Some of the teams of people we work with are very anxious about our product
Yeah.
and almost like want to sabotage
Yeah.
its success. And so I think there is two things. One, when you hire and you have a job posting with a job description, update your job descriptions because like we said, AI allows you to be a polymath. You can be a specialist in a lot of different things. So the expectation is not just doing your job, but it's finding new ways to help in the business in any way, because you can now. There's no excuse. Like, you can learn how to, okay, there's a problem with our trust score over emails. No one knows how to do that, but you can figure it out. So just do it. So very intentionally saying, this is a job, but generalists. Like, the job is also figuring out what's wrong and what we can do to hit those key KPIs. And I think setting what your KPIs are and what definition of success is in your company allows people to think, okay, in a world where I could be in multiple places at a time and I didn't have to do the stuff that I really hate doing, what are things I could do to help accelerate us towards those KPIs? And are those things that I enjoy doing?
Yeah.
Because then there's an incentive to being like, oh, I'm totally going to use AI to get rid of the stuff that I hate doing. And I have found that there is this huge impact space that only I can do.
Interesting. And so almost the question you have to ask yourself continuously is, I used to say, um, level one entrepreneurs always ask how. How do I do this? Level two entrepreneurs always ask who can help me do this. But maybe level three entrepreneurs ask, how can AI solve this for me?
Yep.
And it's just not how, it's not who, now it's AI. And so every problem you have, you should be asking, how can I prompt AI to solve this solution for me? When I feel pain, AI. When I don't like something, AI.
Well, I think it's both how can AI help here, but keeping in mind that there are certain areas where the human touch does matter. Communications with people. And, we talked about infinite email inbound and fake deep fakes and bots. And I think people really appreciate authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think being authentic and upfront now, it may not get you like the overnight growth that people are getting with these AI agents, but in the long term, you'll build a reputation of someone who is trusted. And as the bar for trust gets higher, where it's like, I don't know what to believe, but that person has always been authentic and honest. So I know when I see that person and what they say, I can trust them.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, we put a bunch of our customer service emails in one company through AI, and the team was really excited about it. They're like, look, it can actually prompt to create this personalized email for people. And I was like, curious, show me the email. I'm like, for the love of all that's holy, please never send these to anybody, because they felt like computerized sloppiness.
Yeah.
And so you have to make sure, I think, in some ways, that the things you do with AI don't become complacent, because it would almost be better to have a slightly badly written human email than to have a mid AI based email.
Yeah. Or what I do with my digital mind is I just send them my clone.
Yeah.
Customers who have questions, it's in the product. I send them the clone and they know it's my clone. But the alternative is either me not having time to meet over the next few weeks or answer any emails, or me sending them our documentation, which has so many pages. They don't want to read and look for the whole thing. So instead, it's just a much more convenient way for them to get the information they need.
God, I really need to get my clone going with you, don't
Oh
I?
yeah, we're gonna get it set up in the next week.
Okay. When it comes to AI in particular, and like hiring, you had mentioned the resume, and that you should put on there that, there needs to be like some AI first. Like, how else do you think about hiring in a world with AI? Is there anything else different that you do today?
Yeah, I don't know if this is different because of AI, but we hire two kinds of people at Delphi.
Uh-huh.
Either those that are the top 0.1% in what they do. And how do you know they are the top
Yeah.
0.1%? They are more artists than scientists.
Hmm.
They're like Rick Rubin vibes.
Wow.
You don't want to hire people who are externally motivated. You want to hire people who are obsessed with being the best. And so I talked to you about this growth guy we just hired. He's obsessed with the craft, and he can just obsess and talk about it for like an hour straight. And I'm like, oh my God, I would work for you. And I think that's a key thing. I would work for you in your best form.
Yeah.
And then the other kind of person we hire is the usually high school or college dropout or young person, very scrappy, high slope. And you can learn a lot about slope based on one, in the interview process, are they using AI to learn
Mm.
different things? For me, how they talk to my clone. They're curious about
Wow.
the business. They're learning things. They're learning fast. And our first hire was a 17-year-old kid from Belgium who now has a visa. Now he's in San Francisco, and he has designed everything in our app. And some people say the best part of our Delphi is our design. And it's just like some 17-year-old kid who has just hustled and worked super hard because he has the potential to be that 0.1%.
Yeah. I was talking with Ankur the other day from Carrie,
Yeah.
and one of the lines I loved the best that he said on that podcast, if you guys haven't listened to it, you should. He was it's called, he's the founder of Carrie. And so one of our other portfolio companies, but he said a line that you guys live in San Francisco that I forget often. And I think people do in the rest of the country, that in Silicon Valley, the magic of it is that is one of the few places in the world where we unequivocally are fascinated by what young people are obsessed with. That the age has no bearing on how intelligent you are or how efficient you are or whether you should be listened to or not. And it's like a Latina from a culture where it's like, you're too young. Like, nope. That is opposite in Silicon Valley.
Yep.
And it sort of feels like if you're a young person today with tech where you are, man, what a time to be alive
It's the
because
best.
you will be listened to in a way that you never have before, I think, as our ability to go backwards and learn all this stuff is so much less than your ability to natively integrate it.
Totally. And I talked about people needing to unlearn their assumptions in order to like really open their mind in what this AI first world looks like. And some people are very rigid in their way of thinking, and it's a lot harder for them. But the great thing about young people is that full open mind. The sky's the limit. They haven't been told no so much in their life that they've become cynical, and it's like default no. It's like default yes. Let's see what's possible.
Yeah, and you know what's fascinating too? In some way in this world today, I always loved that line, which is, pessimists sound smart and optimists make money.
Hmm.
I think increasingly, though, with technology, optimists are going to win even more
Yep.
because pessimists sound incredible on the internet. I hear them all day, every day. It's not possible to do this. Businesses don't make sense. Not anybody could buy them. Not everybody could own a business. You could never make that much money. And it's like now we're in this change in our content where we're actually showing people like we are doing the thing live with as much transparency as possible to say, that this bar is so fucking low, you guys.
Yeah.
This is low, actually. When you see what you guys are building, your ability to go out and start a vending route and make 5 figures a year and then 6 figures a year, yeah, that's fucking possible. This is
Yep.
not rocket science.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really cool. Do you think in the future then, is this the best time to be alive for a young person?
Yes, I think it is the best time to be alive for a young person who is very confident with their intuition.
Hmm.
Because I think all of the low-hanging fruit of startup ideas, payment system, accounting system, they're all taken. Meaning, I think really the only opportunities left are those that are weird or, Keith, our investor, says he likes to invest in companies where the majority of people are laughing at him. And when
Mm.
we started the company a month before ChatGPT, people laughed at us. People thought it was stupid. Why would this be a business? And it didn't work out for like a year. But I think both, if you're doing something that people are laughing at, lean in. And two, uh, it's just going to take more time for those things to develop and manifest because there's a huge idea maze. It's a weirder idea. It's a new space. You have to travel the idea maze, which is a concept that I think Balaji Srinivasan coined, where you have this idea and you're trying to figure out what the best way to execute it is. And there's certain dead ends, and you have to go back and okay, that didn't work. But eventually, you get to the gold star of the idea maze.
Yeah, it's actually fascinating. I imagine like the inside of a computer or an LLM actually is like a conversation with Balaji. If you've ever, do you know him?
Yeah, he's one of our investors.
Oh, I didn't even know
Yeah, yeah.
that.
He's got a Delphi and everything.
Oh, he's a friend of mine, and every time I talk to him, I feel like I can see him actively working the idea maze because he actively is sort of talking about and maybe this is the way of the future a little bit. Here's an idea. I want to beat it up. So here's my premise one, two, three, four. Here's why I'm confused on whether premise four is real. And you can see him kind of real time speaking it out loud,
Totally.
which I think is interesting because now you can do that back and forth with AI. It's
Yeah,
almost like premise test, premise test, premise test.
exactly. He did it with crypto. He did it with network states,
Yeah.
and that's why I think it's important to build a muscle of being told no.
Mm.
Like the being underestimated is a good thing. People laughing at you is a good thing. Naval has this line where he's like, "You want to be a loser. Like you want to be a loser that can't fit in because then you're just going to do things your own way. And doing things your own way is actually where the biggest alpha is."
That's so true.
Yeah.
Did you have a moment where you were laughed at? when you started the company?
So many times. I mean, people were like, one, oh, like you're not OpenAI, you don't have any AI researchers, you're not going to succeed. You need to own the model. The model is where the moat is, which
Mhm.
actually turns out the model's commoditized, and I think the foundation model companies are at most at risk. Uh, Two is like, why would people want this? I don't get it, and it just made me realize that people are very much thinking like now, and we need to teach people more to think about the end in mind, like the projection, like where is this going? Why does this matter? And why is this? Delphi is rooted in human psychology. We want to learn from other people. We read books. We watch YouTube videos. Sometimes we pay for coaching. It's first principles thinking like, yes, it works. And I actually think the book that helped me stick with Delphi for the first year, which was not easy, not working. There's a book called Loon Shots.
Mm,
It's one of our required readings in our company. And in the book, he talks about this concept of the false fail.
mm.
And basically, it's where something fails, but not because the idea is bad, but because something else about it is bad, like the execution. And so he talks about Peter Thiel evaluating MySpace as a social network, and people are leaving MySpace. And some people are like, oh, social networks don't work. Like, you shouldn't invest in social networks. But what Peter Thiel found is people are leaving MySpace because it's very buggy. There's a lot of bugs, and Facebook does not have bugs, and it's working pretty well. So he's like, okay, MySpace is a false fail. So I'm going to invest in Facebook. And so similar with Delphi, it's like, okay, false fail. The brand isn't good enough for Delphi to work. People are trusting us with their data. So it has to be like a really, really trusting brand, really high quality product.
Mm. What other books are on your required reading list for your high performers?
A lot. So we got Loon Shots, of course, 0 to 1, but that's like a classic tech bro book. Build by Tony Fadell, one of my favorite books. He talks about how you want to follow your intuition first and then data second.
Mm,
And I really resonate with that because in the end, our intuition is all we have.
mm.
I would rather be wrong listening to my own intuition than listening to someone else, because at least if you're wrong, you get the data and your intuition improves. Uh, Another is, I said 7 Powers, Loon Shots, 0 to 1, Mastery by Robert Greene,
Mm.
How to Be the Best.
He's on the podcast tomorrow.
Really,
I know he's like on my list of like
he
people I'm
is
going to geek out the most about meeting.
amazing. Yeah,
I'm
his
very
book,
concerned about what questions to ask. You should send me any if you have
I will
some.
totally send you. I will
Okay,
totally
make
send
me
you
look
some.
smart.
Um, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, Joe Dispenza, very big believer in manifestation and energy. And then not a required reading, but it's around is the book about my grandfather, which successful entrepreneur in Iran, and he was actually like a Rockefeller type of Iran before the revolution happened, and he had a book written about him, about his values, and that book is what led me to creating the first clone of him in 2021 so that I could learn from him and learn from his values. And so, yeah, have I sent you a copy of that book? I got to
No,
send you one. I need
yeah,
to
you
send it
got
to
to
all our
send me
investors. Yeah.
one. You know what you need to talk about is this idea of like I hear some of the richest people in the world want to talk to you guys about creating clones or digital minds of their more senior members. So let's say this isn't the real one, but let's say the Valentino family or whatever might want to create a version so that patriarch never dies or matriarch never dies. Is this something that you see the rich and famous doing? And in the future, will all of us be able to talk to our AI grandfather version?
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's only rich and famous. I mean, everything we do in our life is almost in the pursuit of legacy,
Mm,
whether it's business for our family, and we live and we die and then our impact is gone. What does it look like where the decisions we make today have the potential to truly impact the life of someone 200 years from now? Like, we already read books of people from the past, but imagine if something like this existed 500 years ago. Imagine you could learn from all of these people, and you find out that people 500 years ago had the same problems that we have today. So insecurities, love, business, ambition. And so not only I think is it good for family and connection and passing down values, as that was a huge inspiration for my grandfather. I didn't want the life that he lived to be lost. I wanted to make sure that the values and lessons he learned I could apply
yeah.
so that you could stand on the shoulders of giants who are your ancestors and at least keep their legacy moving forward. but also for the future to learn from the past because, history repeats itself. There are mistakes, but maybe that doesn't need to be the case.
Oh, yeah. Well, also, can you imagine? I mean, right now, my grandparents are going through dementia,
Mm,
and my grandma just had her 3rd stroke, and I'm
mm,
incredibly close with them. And so watching them slowly lose all mental function is one of the harder things I think I've ever done in my life.
yeah,
And, I could only imagine what it's like for my father, those are his parents, and I think about often, God, what are the questions that I wish I would have asked them before? Like, what does it take to be married for 60 years happily, where
yeah,
they, like, love each other? What lessons would you have for having kids who are so close as a family unit that, we get together constantly and are always laughing, like, the real things that matter in life, not,
yeah,
not what your tech stack was, but, something deeper.
yeah.
And if I had gotten some of that from them, that would have been priceless to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's same thing with my grandparents and my parents. That's why we're working on this interview mode feature where you can get them to answer questions about themselves over a period of time. Luckily, my grandpa had a book, but not everyone has a book. So how do you get that information down
Yeah.
so it can be preserved?
Yeah, that's such an interesting idea because for those that are close, with your family, how many times do you, at least for me, I always go to my dad with work stuff. And it's not so much that he's done exactly the same thing. There's just a wisdom
And a
that's there.
trust, and a
Yeah.
trust. He wants the best for you.
Right. No exterior
Yeah,
motives, no real.
unconditional love.
Right.
Yeah,
And so what would that be like after he was gone to still be able to talk to a version of him?
and
Oof.
even your kids to be able to experience him the way that you experienced him.
They just get on TikTok, watch me dance, they'll be
Oh
perfectly
man,
fine.
TikTok. Yeah.
Um, Really fascinating. Okay, where I kind of wanna end is, with all of this going on with AI, there's so many shiny objects, things we can chase. Where should we really be narrowing down today? And how do you decide what is important to you to focus on in a world in which information is totally abundant?
Yeah, I mean, shiny object syndrome is abundant right now. There's like a new thing every day on Twitter. Uh, I think that the top things to keep in mind, it is easier than ever to build a sexy demo that goes viral on Twitter. And the fact that it goes viral incentivizes more of that. And so don't get sucked into the hype of a Twitter demo because it is much harder to build something that is scalable. The initial Delphi demo was super easy. Actually, making Delphi useful was much harder. Number two is I actually think pay attention to the motives of the founders of the company
Mm,
because not only does that matter for someone who's building like a get rich quick scheme and then the AI product that you're using is no longer active. Two, it matters for your data.
mm,
You don't want to work with a company that you are talking to or giving your data to, and then they're using your data to train their models, and now you're losing your IP and moat. So I actually think getting to know the intents of the founders are really important. And then the last thing is back to what we've been saying over and over again: thinking with the end in mind. So an example of thinking with the end in mind is right now, if you wanted to build an app, uh, you may spend $200,000 hiring some mobile app development firm to build it out. But if you look at Lovable and how fast AI software engineering is moving, potentially in 6 months, you could just pay someone $40,000
yeah.
to leverage AI tools and just get the same outcomes. So I think timing is an important thing too. Like should you pay to do this now or should you pay to do this later? And what are the things you should pay to do now?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the thing about the founder's intent, you just really hit home for me because you think about 23andMe, right? Bankruptcy proceedings. They have my data
And it's going to the highest bidder.
and anybody could have it.
Yeah.
And I have no rights to that. And that has material consequences in a world in which biotechnology looks different. And so it's a really good question. How do you figure out a founder's intent? I mean, not no shade, and I don't know what the right side or wrong side of it is, but Sam Altman and OpenAI is a great question in the beginning. Lots of people could say, well, intentions looked good, and now there's some questions on that. How do you think you actually figure out somebody's real intentions when you're going to give them your dollars and your data?
Yeah. I mean, I am a huge fan of Sam Altman and OpenAI. So I have a lot of respect for what they've done. But as you said, the shift from nonprofit to profit and then training models on people's data, And then there's that one polygram essay where he says if Sam Altman was on an island, he'd become king of the island.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, there's certain data points on people that you can get to see like what their true intentions are. So Delphi up front, we're like, you own your data. We're not sharing with other people. It can be deleted at any time. Super important for us. And so some founders don't have an online presence, but I almost feel like it's a default for every company these days to have a manifesto, an about page. Like, why are they doing what they're doing? What inspired them? What the vision is? I think clarity and thought of the vision and the reason, I think, is important.
It's a really good question. So you should be asking, if you're going to use AI tools today, who owns the data?
Hmm.
What happens if I don't want you to have the data anymore, company?
Yep.
And what's your background? Why are you doing what you're doing? What other questions should you ask somebody before you give them your dollars and data?
What insight inspired the company?
Mm.
Was it like a first principled insight, or was it like a get rich quick insight?
Yeah.
What's the vision long term? And I think another example is, let's say a software says, "Hey, Cody, uh, put in a topic and we'll generate 1 million SEO optimized blog posts." And you take a step back. Another question you can ask yourself is, okay, what does the world look like when everyone has access to this? Is
Mm.
this a tool that I want to be associated with? Do I want to be a part of the group that is flooding the internet with SEO optimized blog posts? Probably not. I think that's going to get a bad rep.
Yeah. No, I don't. Interesting. Okay. In closing, for somebody who wants to get on this journey, one, they should definitely go to Delphi. They can play with your clone live so they could
Yes.
actually talk to
Ask
you.
my Delphi.
Yeah, if you like anything that Dara's talked about today, you can literally go there and have a conversation with you, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
So
Have this
you're
with all
actually
your podcast hosts.
yeah, you literally can basically say, I like something that happened and I'm watching somebody like Dara put it into action, which I think is also a really good thing to do. A lot of people are talking about things. That's a big problem that I have with AI today. It's like, okay, you guys are all talking about theoretically what AI could be doing, but can you take it all the way to fruition? We just did this on a YouTube video. I saw this thing on Twitter where a guy started talking about being able to do this XYZ activity. When we did XYZ activity, what we found is it wasn't exactly the way it was portrayed.
Yep.
It
A
took
lot of that.
way longer.
Yeah.
It was way harder. There was much more human interaction. And so when we did it, we were kind of like, all right, at the end, you could do this. But currently, it's like watching a toddler with an iPad, heavy supervision,
Yeah.
right? Lots of interaction. And so I think seeing people do it live is super important. But for somebody else who just wants to start on the path of AI, is the answer just go to ChatGPT and start playing? Or what's the playbook for somebody that wants to learn more and doesn't know where to start?
I think first thing is first principles. Like, really try to understand the why of all these things and build up your foundation from the ground up. So you start with floor 3 without floor 1 and 2, building's going to fall.
Mhm.
You got to build that foundation. And it takes time, but like that's how you're going to grow a strong, tall building. 2, with that first principles, having a long-term view. The long-term view is what it's going to set people apart. 3 is, like you said, getting started with the ChatGPT, being creative, not being afraid of things not working.
Yeah.
And then 4 is consistency. Because there is shiny object syndrome, because there is TikTok, attention spans are lower than ever, and people are less and less willing to like do the work for long periods of time. And I think that's actually like a huge competitive advantage if you're able to do that.
Yeah, consistency plus grit.
Yeah.
What are your favorite GPTs to use? Like I use Perplexity a lot and I use Grok for Twitter, just like news based. Do you have different ones that you use for different things?
Yeah. O1 is great for those consulting like projects.
Okay.
It's $200 per month, but I think totally worth it. Claude is particularly good for language and writing.
Yep.
Specifically, if you're emailing someone, everyone speaks different languages. And I don't mean languages as in like Spanish or English. I mean, we perceive things in different ways and we make assumptions and projections on what you actually mean by certain words. So I use Claude for very difficult emails, fundraising, negotiations, hiring. This is what I'm saying. Help me change the wording a little bit so it doesn't come off the wrong way to this person.
Wow.
Great for that.
Interesting. Do you use Perplexity or Grok for anything, or are those really just the two you use?
I use Perplexity. sometimes when I meet someone, I'll ask Perplexity, tell me everything I need to know about this someone.
Yeah.
So like I can be prepared. I use Delphi obviously for
Yeah.
learning. And I don't think we use Grok or Gemini yet. No.
Okay. For anything.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Let's close with this. If I had to say, are you positive on AI versus negative on AI, you would say?
Long-term positive, short-term, think there is going to be anxiety and structural change and like meaning, and it's going to take some time for people to fully accept. And I imagine when we found out that Earth was a planet in a huge universe and it's actually not the center of the universe, I imagine people at that time were like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm not the center of the universe. And then they got over it. And I think there's going to be a similar transition period. I think the government will need to adapt. I do think UBI is important. Yeah, but long-term optimistic.
Okay. Dara, you're the man. Where should people go to find you?
Dara Laj on Twitter or X, and then delphi.ai/Dara-Laj. If you want
Amazing.
to talk to my Delphi.
And I do really like your X or Twitter. I just can't call it X still for some
can't.
reason.
I can't.
Like I'm Xing today. It just doesn't work
The
for
brand
me.
doesn't feel right.
But I do like what you tweet about because it is from this first person view of AI. Plus, you got a little edge, and I'm into that. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Cody.
Yay! You and your teens trying to figure life out. What do you wish that you could tell him that you know now that he didn't know then? So we're going to give you this. You write it out, and then you'll read it to the listeners like you would to young you.
Well, to my younger self, I would say trust the process. The world will pull you in a million directions and make you doubt yourself. And most of them know nothing. They're all just figuring it out. And your best bet is to know who you are, what you care about, follow your intuition, and trust the process.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Dara.
Thanks, Cody.
At this place, we are not a family. If you work for a business right now where they tell you that it is a family, you should run away. A business is a high-performing team. You're either excellent or this place isn't for you. You don't go to the Chicago Bulls so that you feel comfortable. You don't go play on Kobe's Laker team so that you can do whatever you want and you don't have to get any fucking feedback. Competition is fucking fun, you guys. There's a thrill to trying to see what you're capable of. This is the Big Deal Podcast, and I'm Codie Sanchez. Today, we're going to talk about how to get on winning teams, how to run winning teams, and we're going to talk about what it takes to actually have the life that you want, because you can't get very far by yourself. This is kind of a Cody was having a hissy fit last week situation where I was running some stuff with teams. Running teams are one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life. If you've ever done it, you know, whether it's your kids' basketball team or it is your actual company that you're running. The best part about running a business, the people. The worst part about running a business, the people. And so this episode is kind of like the hard truth I want to instill and like bury into the brains of every single human who works for me, and also young Cody, and Cody before she had achieved a lot of things that she wanted in life. And so if you are worried at all about how do you run better teams, and if you want to be a winner on a team, this episode's for you. I want to start with a story. And the story is from a book I've been reading lately called 11 Rings by Phil Jackson, who is one of the most storied basketball coaches of all time. He won with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen during the Chicago Bulls era, sort of like the most famous period in all of basketball in the U.S. And then he went on to win also with Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal in the Los Angeles Lakers. And so he's just a legend. And I want to share some of the stories that he shared. One story I want to share is about how he is called the Zen Master. So this was kind of counterintuitive for me, but I believe that the way things start is usually the way things go. And if you don't like it in the beginning, you're not going to like it in the end. And why I like this and relate this to being a Zen Master is, if you don't know, Phil Jackson was a practicing Zen Master and practiced Buddhism. So he's like this big, huge former basketball player, kind of known for being fiery, yelling at players. A lot of players didn't like him. He didn't like a lot of players. So he's this intense figure who simultaneously is a Buddhist, which is kind of interesting. And they called him the Zen master because he would have a group of gnarled, intense, sometimes from the hood basketball players like the original Chicago Bulls were, and he would try to get them to meditate. And what I think is interesting is the way things start is the way they end. He was pretty famous for every single day meditating in the morning. And I know a lot of these days, self-help gurus talk about the importance of meditating. Can I tell you something right now? There would be zero way I could run the number of businesses I run right now if meditating wasn't a part of my practice. 60% of the time. Not every day. I wish I was that perfect. But if you're wondering what you could be doing every single day that literally wouldn't even be a hard tax on your body, would be like stroking yourself like a little cat that needs an itch, it would be meditating. And I get that from one of the hardest dudes I know. And in fact, he even went so far as to tame Dennis Rodman in many ways, who was a psychopath, if you didn't know him, famously friends with Kim Jong-un, and one of the more wild basketball players of all time. And one of the ways that he did that was by teaching Dennis Rodman meditation. Another story that he told that I thought was really interesting was a story about a Buddhist monk, and I'm going to tell the story to you, and then I'm going to tell you why it matters and how you can use it with your team, because I just told it to them on our Monday call we do each week. The story goes like this: there's a Buddhist monk who travels around to a bunch of towns in China, and he shares his wisdom. He's known for these like long, intense philosophical lectures where he speaks to groups of hundreds of monks. And one week, as he's giving one at the end, he's wrapping it up. And we see all the monks sort of enraptured with his wisdom and brilliance. But one monk raises his hand and he says, "I actually understood not one thing you said during the last few hours. Could you tell me one simple thing that is true about Buddhism?" And the monk thinks for a minute and he just says, "Everything changes." And why I think this is so important is because a lot of times in my teams, I see a little freak out about change. We humans do not like it much. It typically signals some sort of transition in which we could have a threat or something could go wrong with us. But in fact, if we can get used to change, then we can get more used to winning, because how can you grow a tree but start with a seed? How can the seed become a tree but crack open, expand, get watered, grow into something absolutely ridiculous? Is only by the fact that change is inevitable and it has to go through it. And so I loved that story from him. The idea that Phil Jackson has is one that I try to inspire in my teams, which is basically this: that at this place, we are not a family. We're not a family. And I, in fact, think that if you work for a business right now where they tell you that it is a family, you should run away, because it's not true. You don't fire your family unless, they did something really gross. You don't yell at your family in a performance review and tell them that they're not meeting company expectations and give a scorecard to grandma. You're just like, "Okay, grandma, she says inappropriate shit every time she gets a little ginned up. Okay, fine." It's a totally different thing. So a team is not a family. A business is not a family. What is it? A business is a high-performing team. At my companies, we run fast and we grow, and we're some of the fastest companies in our sectors because we operate like the Chicago Bulls. The idea is you're either excellent or this place isn't for you. And hey, no problem. Not everybody wants excellence, and that's okay. You can go do non-excellence just about anywhere else in the country. But if you are one of those crazy motherfuckers that can't sleep for the want of becoming a better human, that wants to wring out the capability you have within you, that wants to make as much money as possible, create things that matter in the world, and actually do it with a group of other people who are just as good as you, then you want to work at my companies. And that's what we say. You don't go to the Chicago Bulls so that you feel comfortable. You don't go play on Kobe's Laker team so that you can do whatever you want and you don't have to get any fucking feedback. You go on those teams because you're like, "I am the best in the world and I will win at this championship." And if you don't want to win, you go play in the B leagues. You have a beer club. Like, that's fine. Nobody's saying that you have to do that. This is a self-selected process. But I think we should be honest about the fact that the best businesses are like teams. You trade players when they don't fit anymore. They trade you when they want a different salary or a different geography. You guys hope that you make each other better. You take care of each other. You exit in the right way. You have good and constructive feedback, and you have really harsh conversations. But you don't expect to be tied together for life. If you are tied together for life, that's a partnership, and that's something a little bit different. And only a few of the people that you work with through time will actually become partners. My old boss, Jim Bowen, used to call it people who had traveled through time with. The only people that got partnership, aka equity at that company, were people who traveled through time together. And that, I think, is very true. The other thing that I wish I realized earlier about teams and being a winner is this. Look up the history. Do you think Scottie Pippen, one of the best basketball players of all time, and Michael Jordan, arguably the best basketball player of all time, you think they got along the whole time they were at the Chicago Bulls? Well, actually, if you looked at, all of the posters and the paraphernalia, you might think, yeah, they look like best buddies. He's always feeding him the ball. They're like the two biggest names. They built this huge team, but actually, they hated each other many times. They rubbed against each other the wrong way. They had massive friction. They disagreed. They pushed each other because the truth of the matter is iron sharpens iron. And I think the other thing we have to realize that we've totally lost in this world today, I don't really know why, but we've lost the ability to have really difficult conversations with people and to say, you really want to go there? You actually want to have this conversation? Do you think you're on the right side? And push back. And have the other person push back too. And the truth of it is, you can push back on two people as long as you're excellent. It stops becoming so interesting when you're not excellent. Then you're just cantankerous. But if you're actually trying to better the team, if you're trying to get better yourself, then that's exactly what you should be doing. And we should be okay with a little bit of creative friction on teams. In fact, if you're running a team right now in the business sense, one of the most important things that I've realized is you have to have built-in incentive friction on your teams. So think about this. In basketball, some players are defenders, right? And some people are offense. So some people are going to try to score a basket, and some people are trying to stop the other team from scoring a basket. They are inherently at odds. The defenders want to make sure that it's super hard for anybody to make mistakes. The offense wants to make sure that they can push, they can score, they can shoot the ball, they can let the ball out of their hands and shoot it at a net and maybe miss it and maybe have the other side get it. Now, inherently, that's not the same thing, and it's the same in business. You need to have people who are saying, I want revenue here. Drive revenue, drive revenue, drive revenue. But if you allow the person who drives revenue to also control quality at your business, does that always work? And the answer is no. I mean, we made a big mistake the other day with one of our companies. We actually had a big email list, and content used to contain that email list, and the email list then moved to marketing. And marketing used the email list as a revenue driver, as they should. That's what marketing does. But content was sort of asleep at the wheel and not realizing that, oh, wait a second, we should be protecting this asset. This is a product. You can't use this to squeeze an email list for revenue. Do you see the inherent tension? If they both are aligned to only revenue or only quality, then we won't move. This is the left and the right-hand side of an or. And so everything in business is basically you as the leader going left, and your team starts rowing left, and they push all the way through the left stroke. And then you go right, and they grab the right-hand side of the oar, and they pull the boat right. And your team's like, how come you keep going left, right, left, right? Why can't we all row the same way? Because that's not actually how you forward propel a boat. You forward propel a boat continuously straight by pulling the left and the right oar. Most of your team is never going to get this. Some of them, if you explain it really simply, might. The other thing to realize is that, I love this idea. It's actually a quote from Plato, which is that necessity is the mother of all invention. But Phil Jackson talked about it because they play an interesting game. In sports, you have what's called a zero-sum game, right? So one person loses, which means one person can win. There are not two winners. There is no participation trophy. There is just one. And in business, that's often not the case. Like, there are very few industries in which only one person can survive, in which if I sell you X, my competitor has to lose Y. That's not usually the case. And so what I love about this is it basically shows you in that instance, they're playing the ultimate game. You are either a winner or a loser. And if you think about that in business, we've gotten a little soft to this idea that not everybody can be a winner. And that if you're in business, that using even the word loser is bad. We lost this, we failed at this, we didn't make it. And I don't think that's true. When you have a loss, you learn more from the loss than you do from a win. What do you do when you win? You celebrate. What do you do when you lose? You ask yourself, what did we do wrong? What happened here? How do we change this? And the best teams, they become better by continuing to push one way or the other. One of the best things that winners do that others don't is they do something called call your shot. That's what we call it at Contrarian Thinking. So anytime we set a big goal for ourselves, let's say I say, hey, we're going to close a big deal. We're going to invest in a company. We're going to make this much money in the next month or two. And I say, I am so certain that we're going to do it. I want to pit myself against the world. I want to play a zero-sum game in which I either hit this goal or I didn't. We say that's called to call your shot, kind of like you might call your shot at a free throw line, like that's going in, or a three-pointer, or I'm going to score this many points per game. And the reason why you do that is because competition is fucking fun, you guys. I think as we get older as adults, we forget about this game of competition. Unless we're athletes all the time playing against one another, there's a thrill to trying to see what you're capable of. And so if you want to be a winner, I think a fun thing to do even in your business, even as an employee, is to say, I want to call my shot on this. I think I'm going to be able to hit this thing by this date faster than anybody else. And if you're not even an employee, I think about it. For instance, my mom, who I love, we call her the bulldog. She's an absolute animal. She just gets things done, or she's like a dog on a bone. She's just like, just gnaws on the fucking thing until the marrow comes out. And so anyway, we had a problem near the office with a homeless dude. And the homeless dude, whatever, he's staying on a lot by the office. But you guys, and you could only make this up in Austin, Texas, he takes over the lot. Then he creates like a house on the lot, like a tent house on the lot. We're kind of ignoring him. It's fine. I'm watching to see if there's anything dangerous going on. Well, it escalates when he threatens one of my employees with a knife and tells her that she can't park in front of his property because he is turning into a paid parking lot and she is in front of his parking lot. And so he says, do not park there, threatens her with a knife. Anyway, we call the cops. The cops come, and I fuck you not. I couldn't make this stuff up if I wanted to. The cops come, and they talk to my husband, and they tell him that they can't do anything because the guy says that she was parking in front of his ingress-egress. And so she shouldn't do that. So you almost have to laugh. So anyway, my mom heard this and was like, this is ridiculous. Law-abiding, paying taxes citizens. We're going to make sure that is not acceptable. And so what does she do? She works the problem. And she says, we're going to finalize this to make sure all of your people are safe. And we're going to do it in the next 30 days. And lo and behold, I get a phone call today and she does it. And so I don't want you to think this is just related to business. Call your shot in life. You might surprise yourself at what you're capable of. And then the cool part is you might actually do it. And it could be a small thing or it could be a big thing. The last thing on Phil Jackson I want to close with is that he has a great saying. So let's say that 2024 was not your year. Team hasn't done what you wanted to do. Your business hasn't. Your life hasn't gone the way that you want it to go. He says, do you want to know the best way to not win this year? It's to do what you did last year. And it's so simple, except so often we keep repeating the exact same habits, routines, people we hang out with from one year to the other. And so if everything changes is the mantra we know to be true, then we've got to make sure that we change alongside it, because the only thing that we know will kill us for certain is in a world in which everything is evolving. If we stand still, what are we actually doing? We're atrophying. Physics tells us this. There is no such thing as stasis. You cannot stand still. Even right now, if I wasn't moving, I would be breathing, blood would be pumping, atoms in my body would be moving around. There is no such thing as standing still. So if you are not moving, you are actually doing what? You're atrophying. You're starting to die. And I remember that a lot in business. That's why you have to set bigger goals every single year, because if you think, hey, let's just keep the business exactly like this, well, what do we know? I don't know, inflation increased by anywhere from 3 to 10%. More competitors come on board, so they come at us. Maybe our product is old, and so the product needs a little bit of zhuzhing up because it's not as relevant anymore. Maybe AI has crept in some way. So if we aren't evolving, we are dying. And if you do the same things this year that you did last year, you're not going to make it. And I think that's a hard truth. Okay, let's do a few stats here to show you that I think I'm right, and we'll see if the data backs this up. So Harvard psychology professor Dr. Richard Hackman actually found that when a team was called a family, it reduces constructive conflict and challenge and lowers the profits of the business. He also found that often it increases employee disengagement, which is problematic because Gallup already says that 70% of employees are disengaged in the workplace, largely due to what? Why are they disengaged? Do they not make enough money? Do they not like their boss? Do you know what the two main reasons are? There's not enough challenge or accountability in what they do. It's actually just that they're like, we're all these little monkeys that we're like, we want the banana. When we touch the red, button, feed us. When we touch the green one and we're not supposed to, don't feed us. We want to know that our work matters. We want to know we're going to get compensated when we do the right thing. And we want to know that somebody's watching one way or another. Otherwise, why are we here every single day with you guys at work when we could be with our family? And I think that's why. In the trust factor study, Meister and Green actually saw that too much safety in the workplace actually breeds complacency and inhibits performance. So when you give too much trust, when you don't push, what happens? It actually means that you don't perform as well, which I think we know this to be true, but it's always helpful when the data backs it up. Okay, my last little pitch to you guys on the data portion of this is look at this. So Kinsey did a study that said, if you have low performing people on your team, and you do not measure productivity of the team overall, what happens? Well, top quartile teams with no low performers on them, they achieve 50% more profitability and 30% more productivity. So when you don't have underperformers on your team, no shock kind of, but when you actually have accountability with those top performers, you make 50% more money and you're 30% more productive. So holding your team accountable makes you more money. I think that makes perfect sense. Another thing that I want to talk about is this idea of attrition. So a lot of times people will say, well, do companies have a lot of people that rotate through them? And that could be a bad thing. And they're right, that could be a bad thing. But it's actually not always a bad thing. Let me explain this. So we see in a bunch of data from Forbes and Harvard that companies with strong performance-driven culture actually have higher rates of employee turnover, so more people leave, but it often represents people finding the right place for them. So this self-selection, aka, hey, this actually isn't a right fit for me at this company because I want to do X or I want to do Y or I don't work this hard, actually allows you to continuously right-size the team as opposed to have bloat. I mean, have you guys seen the government lately, right? We've got billions of dollars cut from the government in 1 week. How does that happen? There's zero accountability in that place. Guess what else? Government employees are the least satisfied with their job. They also are the least likely to get fired. And yet, they are spending all of our taxpayer dollars. Why? Because there's no accountability and there's no performance basis for being in the government. In fact, and I would know because my husband worked in the government for a long time, a lot of times there's not even hierarchical structures. So you don't even have a direct boss. You don't have KPIs, key performance indicators. You don't have a specific thing that you have to hit, otherwise you might get fired. And that, it turns out, is really bad for teams, obviously bad for us as taxpayers, and bad for us as individuals, even though it might sound nice to not get micromanaged all the time. Okay, one other thought here. I found this fascinating Forbes study that actually shows that companies that embrace a performance-driven culture and quote unquote tough love attract higher performing talent and grow at a faster rate than those that focus on retention at all costs. So you would actually make more money, probably be happier, have a better and more profitable team if you gave constructive feedback, if you held people accountable, and even if you had higher turnover. Fascinating. One of the other keys to teamwork that I've been thinking about a lot lately is I think personality hires got a really bad rap. So if you're a personality hire out there, I actually think you got a really big place. There are a lot of reasons why you need a team that is completely different. Let's take the Lakers, for instance. If you go back to Kobe Bryant, he was supposedly really hard to work with. I mean, rest in peace. But he knew how excellent he was. He was pretty intense on his teammates. He always wanted the ball. He always wanted to take his own shots. He and Shaq got into it all the time. Shaq was a little bit more respectful of hierarchy. Kobe could give a fuck. And so they had two totally different personalities. So what did that mean? It actually meant that Phil Jackson had to have other members of the team who could massage the situation. They weren't as good as Kobe. They weren't as big as Shaq, but they went in there with one purpose, which was to make the team cohese together, to bring it together like glue. And so I think sometimes we have to ask ourselves, who is the glue on the team? Is there somebody cracking jokes? Is there somebody who at the end of a terrible meeting is kind of saying, okay, well, this is awful. We got to close this. We'll all hate each other tomorrow. Is there somebody kind of bringing levity to what you do every single day? And if not, that might be your next hire. Let's talk about you. One of the fascinating parts about performance is that we know through multiple studies that if you believe in yourself, you have a higher likelihood to succeed. And if others believe in you, you have an even higher likelihood to succeed. In fact, we know that people's perception of us is so important to us that it can even raise our IQ. When we have students who are labeled as being special, but actually report no higher IQ than another placebo group, just the label means that those students increase their IQ points by 4 points over the course of a year. So what does this mean? Even if you aren't the winner on the team right now, even if you don't have a winning team, how can you believe that you can get there? I think that entrepreneurship is this mixture of unbelievable, irrational self-belief and not quitting. In fact, I want to read you guys something. This was in my diary the other day, and I'm going to read it to you. Okay. I was writing this on a moment where I was recalling back what it was like early on in being an entrepreneur and how hard it is. And I wrote this: the most brutal and quiet battle you'll ever have to wage is to create the life you want. It's not just the doing it, it's keeping the irrational self-belief that you can, believing even when all proof says you won't, and you have no success to show for it. You'll have sleepless nights, and even to your partner, you won't be able to fully explain. No one else gets the weight of not being able to pay bills or secretly worrying you're completely incapable. People say imposter syndrome isn't real. Wrong. I've never met a successful person who wasn't hanging on to the edge of discomfort. But if you can keep this battle alive, keep believing in you despite all of that, you will achieve maybe even more than you set out. That is the truth of the battle of life. I hope this was useful for you this week. This is a solo pod from my heart to your heart, something that I'm struggling with that I hope you struggle a little bit less. I wish somebody had shared these lessons with me, the goods, the bads, the uglies. That's what we do on the Big Deal Pod. I'm Codie Sanchez, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. If you haven't shared with a buddy to tell them you think that they're a winner, please do. That's the only way the podcast grows.
Coaches are important. I still have coaches. You have to believe in the end of your story.
This week's episode is a totally different format. It is going to be multiple billionaire guests that I'm lucky enough to now call friends or have had on the podcast, and we are going to have bite-sized, best-in-class information from each one of them. If you've ever wondered, how do billionaires make all their money? What secrets could I learn from them? Can I get a billionaire mentor? And what does it take to make that crazy level of cash? How do you explain that at a very simplistic level? First principles thinking.
You say, what are our fundamental assumptions? What are we doing here?
Running my businesses like a coach would run a team, I became a lot more effective.
Where should a young builder start today?
You serve.
Would you tell them to go take active risk?
Well, first of all, the younger you are, the easier it is to take risks and use that to your advantage.
How do you know if you're moving fast enough on the decisions you want to make in life?
What happened if you thought about that idea 3 years ago? What if you executed on that? Where would you be now?
Welcome back to the Big Deal Podcast. I'm Codie Sanchez. This week is for you. Only the most tactical, most specific stories so that you can learn from these billionaires too, and you can steal my billionaire mentors. Next week, back to regularly scheduled programming with the fastest growing AI startup CEO out there. I'm going to save who it is. You guys could try to guess. But that episode is also amazing. And it turns out it's the next 2 weeks is only Billy's. So we're going to make a lot of money these next 2 weeks on the Big Deal Podcast. Let's get into it.
Coaches are important. I still have coaches. I have a swim coach.
You had a Navy SEAL live with you.
Coach. Because I wanted to get better at memorizing names. I wasn't great when I met people at remembering their names. So I brought a coach in to help me with that. I've had sales coaches. I've had coaches in so many areas of my life because I'm not great at everything. I want to go to people that are amazing at what they do. I live with Goggins. I lived on a monastery to get better at my spirituality. Investing in yourself to get better is so important. If you're working at an organization, two things. One, I think you should make yourself irreplaceable. That's really important. Then you have the leverage. You can't even fire me. I know everybody, every customer. I'm unfireable. Now you have some leverage, which I think is really important. And you should learn, network, and sponge absorb, especially when you're young, as much as you can. Do everything. Learn everything. Gandhi said it best. He said, learn like you'll live forever, live like you'll die tomorrow. Oof. So you want to learn and keep getting better, in as many things as you can.
Did you Do you have a particular way that you lead people? What do you think it is? Is it either you select these people who are going to be high performers, and so you have a selection bias, or do you have a particular leadership style that you think enables other people to become something bigger?
I think that you have to put confidence in there are so many better. I honestly, Cody, I'm like back of the pack entrepreneur. I know I really am. There's so many amazing entrepreneurs. Like, I don't even put myself, that's not my strong suit. It's not.
Interesting.
It's not. I've had wins. I've had great partners. I've had good ideas, right time, right place. Like, a lot of things happened. But there's so many. I still go to so many entrepreneurs for advice. But I am good at giving people confidence and belief. And that's really important, because if you have to believe in the end of your story.
I think people have beat up this idea quite a bit, but first principles thinking, obviously categorized or created by Peter Thiel, but then you talk about a lot to this day, this idea of getting back to base level. How do you explain that at a very simplistic level, first principles thinking?
Yeah, and Bridgewater, by the way, was all about this as well, which is a very interesting hedge fund, right? It's the biggest hedge fund in the world. But it's really important. You've seen this in lots of areas where you go back and you say, what are our fundamental assumptions? What are we doing here? Like why? Like, what is our firm the best at? Why is there an opportunity here? What are we gonna, like, what's our core capabilities, right? These are really philosophical questions as well, as how do you break down the frameworks for who you are? And then say, okay, given these are our core capabilities, what are the juxtaposed areas, what are the areas next to it that we can go into that are similar? And it's a really good exercise to keep coming back to, because it reminds you of things. This is why building a deck is really good for an entrepreneur, even if it's a small business, is you want to put together, here's 10 pages on who I am, what I'm doing, what the goals are, why it's going to be successful. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs say, oh, well, I'm just so smart and fast, and why would I do this stupid thing that's for stupid people? It's not for me. And it's for everyone, because everyone needs to get back to the core of exactly what and why and who and how. And sometimes those principles, you'll notice, have actually changed in a way. Maybe you intuitively realize one of them's changed, but you don't really find it until you go back and actually write it down. So it's just such a helpful thing. And, as a founder, I really admire the founders, not just of companies, but, the founders of America as well. And the founders of America were really clear about their principles. Yeah. And we're very, very lucky about that. There's all sorts of debates. There's all sorts of writings from that time. I grew up reading something called the London Magazine, which is the founders of America, and the people, writing things in Parliament and everything would write it and argue back and forth, even as you have all these primary sources of what was going on. And it was the Enlightenment had kind of just happened over the last 100 years. And it was really a time where people were really focused on principles in society and what's correct. And so it was a great intellectual breeding ground for founding something like America. But I find founders in general who are the best are similar to the American founders, really debate these things and really come back to them. And that it kind of refreshes and renews what you're doing.
Yeah, it also seems like you have to repeat yourself very, very often as a founder. And so
you do, because you need to make sure people understand the vision of what's going on. I remember early on at Palantir, we'd walk around and talk to a bunch of the engineers helping me recruit, and what's the mission to you in your words? Why are you excited about it in your words? When you're talking to your smartest friends and we're going to go over to Stanford or MIT or wherever else we're going to go and recruit, tell me as if I'm one of them. Let's talk about it, let's practice. And it's helpful. You got to do that.
I think it comes from really how I was raised. I mean, on a farm, you are raised in that situation. You don't have any guarantees, and you figure it out, and you work hard until it's done. And I think just that tenacity really saw me through a lot. And, certainly building a career from Wall Street now into the cabinet, from rural America, I think that just really taught me to dig in, keep going, keep learning, and keep the curiosity about how things work, and keep asking questions, and never accept the first no.
Yeah, you seem like, when we were talking kind of behind the scenes, you're like, I like it. I want to be in there. I want to be making a difference. And I was like, wasn't it scary to run for Senate? That sounds horrifying. You were like, no, put me in, coach. So you got a little of that inner psychopath. I'm into that.
Yeah.
What about, so you owned an MBA, a WNBA team, which seems incredibly hard in just every aspect, not as much funding, lower ticket sales, and then there was inner turmoil in the WNBA. What was the hardest moment for you running that business?
Well, I think the biggest decision came when my business partner and I, we were 50-50 owners, but before that, we were minority owners. And there came a point where the majority owner decided to sell, and we had to look at each other and say, do we want to step up and be 50-50 owners? And I was running a big part of our publicly traded company at the time, and I had to have confidence in the team that we brought on to really run that business day to day, and also the funding. I mean, it was, it's not an inexpensive endeavor to sink money into that every single year.
Was it public how much that was?
No, but it's a couple million, and it was, we'd hoped to be able to get it to break even, but to the point, back then the bigger decision was to say, is this a go or no go? And I believe that when life opens a door for you, and like to walk through it, and that life had opened a door for me as a professional sports team owner, and walking away at that time didn't seem like a good option. And I'm really glad we walked through it. We owned the team for a decade. And it was very grassroots. In fact, I was working with a reporter one time and pitching a story. I mean, I was, making sure that we got the visibility. I had this vision because of what I'd seen living in Chicago during the Bulls run in the 90s. And I thought, my goodness, I see what sports do for a community. They really bring it together. And I think Atlanta could be a great sports town. And so we invested on that basis to not have this as a hobby, but to make this a business and a great community contribution. And we were so glad that we walked through that door and did that for a decade for our fans, for our community, to elevate the sport. And it turned out to be such a good, I learned so much being a sports team owner that applied to business. Because in business, sometimes you can kick the can on a problem. In sports, you can't do that.
Why? Everybody's just yelling at you all the time?
Well, because in sports, the scoreboard shows the results every single day. The ticket sales show the results every single day. The coaching shows the results. And so you have to make those decisions game time. And so I started doing that in business, running my businesses like a coach would run a team. And I became a lot more effective, decisive, and not afraid about what decisions were around the next corner. It just really emboldened me to make those decisions and keep going.
Where should a young builder start today?
Well, I mean, the first thing that, and I just talked to our team about it this morning in a staff meeting, reminding them yet again, one of our core values here is, if you help enough people, you don't have to worry about money. So too many times when we start something, we are enamored with our own idea, our own ability, and the idea is the thing rather than the customer. And what I want to do is I want the person that is not inside the building to be blessed, to be changed, to be served, to have their mind blown. The people inside the building all get their mind blown? Not so much. Not so much. That doesn't do anything. What happens is when all those people out there all over the world, I get the opportunity to help one of them with their budget. I get the opportunity to help one of them with their marriage. I get to help one of them with their spiritual walk. I get to help one of them with their small business. When they, and so we don't build anything for us. We build everything for them. And when you first start, that's not natural. That's paradoxical, because you're kind of into what you're doing, and you're like, oh, I'm kind of good at this, and this is kind of cool. And it was for me anyway. And so when I did the first cassette tapes or VHS tapes, I was like, wow, look at that guy. He's funny and he's good. And it kind of started coming to me, no one cares except your mama and your wife.
And they also don't.
And they don't care that much. So, it's like, but I think that's a thing. Serve. And if you can find a way to make other people's life better and let them be the hero in the story, as my friend Donald Miller says. You have to be the hero, you can be the guide. And, that kind of stuff, it just makes you have a good quality life, and you've got a good philosophical, spiritual underpinning to your business then that you can, okay, we're about service. And when you interact with an organization, a business that is about themselves, you feel the take rather than the give. And when you interact with a company that is all about service, you come away with your mind blown, because they're fairly rare.
How did you get comfortable with risk, or how do you think about risk, especially for young people who maybe haven't had a chance to take it yet? And would you tell them to go take active risk?
Well, first of all, the younger you are, the easier it is to take risk, right? And use that to your advantage. I started my first company when I was 17. And I was in college I was just entering college. And I think I had this mindset that like, okay, like I have this thing, college, right? And like I could do that well. And as long as I'm doing that well, my parents will be okay. So let me go take as much risk as I can take outside of school. And let me go try different things. And I didn't have kids. I didn't have to, I was working and paying some of my own bills at the time, but I had, my parents were supporting me. And I used that as an excuse to take more risk. And I think the older you get, the harder it is to take risk. And risk is like a muscle, right? It's like the younger you try new things, and the earlier you sort of train your mindset to know that like I'm going to do something, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, that's still okay too, because I'm going to learn from that and I'm going to leverage that into the next thing.
How do you think about speed and moving fast? And how do you know if you're moving fast enough on the decisions you want to make in life?
Well, first I want to say, not a dream crusher. I just want to hold you accountable to your best self, right? Like you definitely had all the ingredients as somebody I would want to bet on. And your dreams, your ideas were much bigger than that. You weren't thinking bigger. And I told you at the time, I said, the money is easy. It's having an idea that you can execute on. There's tons of money. There's tons of rich guys that don't want to work. They just want to invest in somebody and make a good return. The question is, how do we find these executors? And when we find them, they dump cash into them and they go golfing or flying or doing whatever they want to do. And so I wanted you to think big, because it wouldn't be hard for you to raise money, right? Like after you went around, you were like trying to cram me down because these other guys want to come in and this guy want to come in. I'm like, no, that guy can't get in, right?
That should happen.
What happened if you thought about that idea 3 years ago? What if you executed on that, a little bit faster? What if you, thought a little bit bigger and moved a little bit faster? Where would you be now? How big would this conference be? How many people would be knocking down your door to figure out how you did it? And so, we're human beings, we're not institutions, we don't live that long. And there's periods in our life, and I just think that life in itself is urgent and important, and your dreams are important. And that advantage of action, speed implies action. You're not just speed running around in a circle, you're moving towards your dreams. And so it's almost taking yourself serious and your dreams seriously by executing. What else should you be doing, right, according to your values? And so I think it's very important. And it's, my willingness to take risk and my ability or my willingness to move quickly towards my goals are the only advantages I have.
I was just looking, and it looks like more than 50% of you are not subscribed to the Big Deal podcast. When you subscribe, first of all, it means we get to bring you bigger and better guests. It's also the #1 way you can support this podcast. If you liked it today, subscribe on whatever channel that you're listening to. And I want to tell you something firsthand. You become whatever you allow into your attention span. And what I hope you feel from us every single day is that I value your attention and your time more than anything else. I promise to only bring you things that are going to make you more money. They're going to make you more motivated to make your life better. So give me a little solid here. Subscribe to the channel. This is how we grow. Also, leave me a review on what you want better and who you want on. I promise you will do it. Hey, if you're a business owner right now and you like the things you were hearing on this podcast, I have something that I haven't talked about publicly before that's just for you. It's called our SMB Boardroom. This is for small business owners who want to grow. It is for business owners who are on their way to making at least 7 figures a year. If this is you, hit the link down below. Talk to our team. This is the place that can be your late night emergency call for the things that go bump in the night in your business. If right now you feel like you're plateauing or you feel like you don't know how to handle your growth, we got you. So click the link below, SMB Boardroom. We just built it for you builders. Kind of obsessed with it. And I think if you are a builder, there's no place you're going to want to be except here. Hey guys, if you've ever thought about buying a business, we've built what I think is the best acquisitions and business buying community and education curriculum in the world. If you've ever thought about wanting to buy or own a business, or if you want to add more businesses to the mix, it's called the Contrarian Community. And what this is the goal is we give you the 3 things that the best business buyers use: your own advisory team, your own investment committee, and a deal team. We get together each week to review deals live and beat up all the deals that you're currently looking at, while you simultaneously learn the best way possible, which is called modeling, by seeing other people put together deals. This is how private equity buys businesses. This is how investment teams work. And we're stealing the methods from Wall Street and giving them to you. If this is interesting to you, go to click the link and you can actually talk to my team direct about if this is a fit or not. We can help guide you. The link is in the show description.
Automation is to your time what compounding interest is to your money.
If you have ever wanted to grow on social media, to be seen as an expert in what you do, to leverage audience to make more money, to get more sales, and to figure out how the biggest names in the world actually got there, this interview is for you. This is an interview with Rory Vaden, who is a multiple times New York Times best-selling author himself. And he has created what I would say is the formula for growing online, growing audience, and then figuring out how do you make more money in your business and your life once you become an expert.
When you have a genuine passion for helping other people, and if you can obsess about it, the way that Dave's obsessed about getting people out of debt, the way that Lewis obsesses about helping people overcome self-doubt, your world starts to change, and you start to change the world of the people around you.
You have a lot of systems and ideas for how you get people to think in frameworks.
Think about it like a rocket. Your personal brand should be the sort of side boosters that you use to get the business off the ground. But then once you get it launched out into space, then your personal brand falls off and the business can just sort of follow a trajectory and live on without you.
Interesting.
The best form of marketing in the world is a...
This is the Big Deal Podcast, and I'm Codie Sanchez. This interview is really interesting. It's hyper tactical. If you don't want to learn about how to make more money online, and you don't want to learn about how to grow online, you're going to hate this interview. But if you do like that, I would sit down, grab a pen, listen up, maybe listen to it twice, because this man has not only done this for himself, but for many, many others. Without further ado, I want to bring you my dear friend Rory, and I want to get into it. So when I was thinking about writing my book, and then I was thinking about marketing my book, there was sort of one human I called all the time, which was you. And we talked about, man, how do I get on the right stages? How do I make this go really viral? Who are the people that are behind sort of the biggest names in the world? And your name obviously came up, and we've shared many a stage now across the country. But, today I thought we could start.
By the way, that book went New York Times bestseller, baby. Didn't it? It sure did.
And you said we were going to, too. I was like, I don't know. Is it?
It was awesome. I'm proud of you, dude.
Well, thanks. You helped a lot. We many a late night text, and we were joking, but I hate voice notes. You love voice notes. So I had to outlaw them.
We had conflict.
I know, exactly. Except they were so good that I had to listen to them, which was so annoying for me, too.
And then I learned a lot because you were like, "Hey, I need you to communicate with me in writing," and I was like, "Okay, that's good. I will write it. I will write it out for you."
Codie is honest. Codie is too honest. But where I thought we could start for people today was, I believe that the internet and attention is the most powerful weapon that you have today in the 21st century. And if you have money, you can buy attention. But if you don't have money, you can't buy attention. And so for people today, I was kind of thinking, if we could break this down from, let's say right now, you have no audience, no followers, where would you start?
Yeah, I mean, you have to start by changing how you think about online. I mean, I think when we talk about personal branding, people, their mind goes crazy to like TikTok and algorithms and brand guidelines and colors and logos and fonts. The way that we define it is that personal branding is simply the digitization of your reputation. So what I would want, if you're just starting out, what I would say is remember that this is reputation. It is as old as time. Like what matters more than the number of followers you have is the depth of trust that your followers have with you. And so people get all freaked out about like who they're going to be on camera and what they're going to say. And it's like, be who you are in real life. Be someone that is an expert. Be someone who adds value to people. Be someone who adds value to people's lives, and build trust first and foremost.
Love it. So if we were going to get super tactical, so first we got to start out with getting an online following is really just reputation increase, right? But if somebody came to me and they were like, I want to grow my personal brand fast and I want to follow your system, Rory, what would be the first couple of steps that you would tell them? Do you have like a steps 1 through 10?
Sure. Here's what I would say. Don't start with why, start with who. So I love Simon Sinek, but when you're building a personal brand, what matters most is being clear on who you're talking to. Once you're clear on who you're talking to, every other downstream decision becomes clear. What are their problems? What content will attract them? What can I sell to them? How much can they afford? What do they need? Where are they? How do I reach them? If you are unclear on your who, every other decision becomes fuzzy. Like, what do I say? What do they want to hear? What topics? If you have diluted focus, you get diluted results. So you have to get crystal clear on who you're talking to. Now, the shortcut on this to figure out who is your who, what we realized is that for all of us, you are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. You are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. That's the fastest path to get clear on your who. And once you nail that, now all of a sudden I can serve that person in the deepest way. And now all of a sudden you have a chance to make content that breaks through the noise. So that's the first place. You start with who.
That's so true. Which is basically just like in business, you build an avatar. You build your digital avatar who's going to be the person you sell things to. And if you're selling attention, it's the same exact thing, right?
Absolutely.
And the biggest problem I think most founders have is they think, oh, it's my product. I need to sell this coffee. The coffee's not selling because the coffee's not perfect enough. But often your problem is actually you don't know who you're selling to, and so you never can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And look what you're doing. I mean, you are serving the person you once were. You're teaching people how to do all of the things. Same with us, right? What are we doing? We're helping experts, entrepreneurs, speakers, authors, coaches, whatever, because we've been in this space our entire career. That's the shortcut.
Let me guess. You've got one tool for email, one for SMS, and another for forms, maybe a separate dashboard for analytics, and somehow you're still not sure if anything's working. That's, I think, the reality for most e-commerce brands. Bloated tech stacks that eat time, wreck your margins, and require a full-time ops person just to function. OmniSend changes that. It's a single platform where email, SMS, sign-up forms, automations, segmentations, and analytics all live in one clean dashboard. You get powerful tools without the learning curve or the price creep. You can launch campaigns in minutes, not hours, and you can buy customer journeys that trigger automatically based on behavior. And the data, it tells you what's working, what's not, and where to double down. Whether you're running lean or managing a growing team, OmniSend makes your marketing operate like a real system, not a to-do list. So if your stack feels like duct tape and prayer, it's time to upgrade. OmniSend was built for brands that are serious about scale. So after you figured out your who, what is next if you want to grow online?
Be able to answer this one question in one word. What problem do you solve for that person? If you look at some of the biggest personal brands in the world, I think of like Brené Brown. Brené Brown owns the topic of shame. She has studied shame for decades, and she became one of the world's leading thinkers, one of the most influential people in the world because she owns that topic. You look at Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey owns the topic of debt. Like he owns that. He owns that word. This is part of how I broke through the wall originally in our first company. All I did was study procrastination, was the psychology of getting people to do things they didn't want to do, right? My first book was Take the Stairs, and it was just a metaphor for how to get yourself to do the stuff you hate doing. Brand Builders Group now, the word that we solve is obscurity. All we do is help people become more wealthy and well-known. So most personal brands cannot speak with a level of clarity about what is the problem they solve for people. And in order for people to pay attention, I have to be able to solve a problem for them, or I at least have to be useful for them. So I would try to narrow that down to one word. And then I would also make a list of maybe 52 questions that your prospect has about the problem that you solve for them. And I would start systematically addressing them. And I'm just trying to go, how can I be so useful that they can't ignore me? How can I be so valuable that they have to pay attention? When I got introduced to you, it's like when you meet high profile people, you can't just jump in and sell them stuff. The goal should be, how can I be so useful they have to pay attention to me? At least that's the goal. That's our strategy.
It's actually so true. A lot of times people will say, how do you get a mentor? How do you get a mentor? And I think the answer to how you get a mentor is exactly that. Make yourself so useful that you become so valuable to them for $0 that they end up eventually wanting to pay you a lot of zeros. And it is this weird flip. And I think a lot of people struggle with that early on because they're like, well, I don't know anything. How am I going to be useful to a Rory, right? Or how am I going to be useful to a Dave Ramsey? But they don't realize that all of us, we have actually just massively more needs. The more successful you become, the more holes you have to fill.
Totally.
And so anywhere that you find some curiosity for a super famous person or for a super successful person, and you think, God, I just want to go down this rabbit hole. And I looked at their website and I found all the spots that I didn't understand. And I went to their social media and I created like 3 ideas for videos that they didn't have. And I just gave them the scripts. It's almost like this upfront work gives all of this back end opportunity.
Absolutely. And I would say philosophically, that's another thing that the best personal brands in the world do is they give first, they serve first, and they allow the money to show up second. It's like paying in rears versus paying in forwards, right? So there's some services we pay and then we get the service. But in the online world, it's like I have to automate trust at scale. I have to one of our mantras that we say is save the best for first. Save the best piece of content you have for the very next thing that you teach. Like you don't have to be scared about giving away all your good stuff and then no one buying. You have to be scared about not giving away anything good enough that nobody ever comes back. So you have to always push yourself to be like, again, it's that value throttle. And it's like, how can I increase the throttle here on adding value to everyone around me? And that applies, I think, offline and online. But, I mean, the reason people pay attention to you is your content is so freaking good. It's so useful. And I think when you're picking your content strategy, I mean, high level, it's one of the 3 E's. We call it the 3 E's. You're either entertaining, and I'm not that entertaining, but some of you are. Some of you can be. You have encouraging, so you can be inspiring and uplifting, and I try to be a little bit of that. But for most of our clients, it's educational, and it's going, what can I teach? And everyone thinks, oh, I don't have anything to teach. And you go, unless you're serving the person you once were. Then all of a sudden, all of us are qualified to teach because we've experienced the pain. We've overcome the obstacle. We've walked through the setback. And now all of a sudden, that's all the credibility that I need.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And it's, one of my mentors said to me, when you get in rooms with people who have more zeros than you, they can actually see into your future because they've been there. And so it's the same idea of, I remember the first time before I was making $1 million a year, before the business was making 8 figures, before the business hit 9 figures, I just got lucky in being in rooms where other people already had the business that I wanted. And it, what was wild is because I got to sit next to, John, who had a business that was already doing $8 million a year back when mine was doing $1 million a year. John basically said, oh, here's going to be the next 5 issues that you have. And so because I knew that, since he had already been through it, I got to steal his 10,000 hours. I got to compress 7 years into 1 year from his interaction.
Yeah.
And so it's a real value, I think, that people don't realize that if you have something to share from your historical lessons, you're doing the world a solid when you put it out there. And I didn't realize that at first because I thought people who taught just couldn't do. We've all heard that adage. And I also thought, well, God, if it works so well, why are you telling other people? Why wouldn't you just go do it yourself? And I remember seeing like a clip. We could actually play the clip here, which is from Mark Cuban. And his clip basically said, if they're telling you about how to do it on the internet, it doesn't work because if it worked, they'd just go do it. And I thought that was so funny. Sounds great. Except it's wrong, because what actually happens is when you give more, you get way more in return. And why do you think some of the richest men in the world, Ray Dalio, for instance, are out telling his theory? Because he gets more clients from it. He gets more deals from it. He gets more hires from it. So I think it's super, super powerful to do all of this.
Yeah. Well, and I would purport that there's another massive piece of the transaction that you don't hear enough about, which is, yeah, you get money. Yeah, you get followers. Yeah, you get influence. The other thing you get is significance.
Yeah.
You get purpose. There is nothing like the feeling you get when you help somebody else succeed, right? And you go, well, if you're so rich, why don't you go do it? And it's like, well, there's a point where you go, I'm not playing because I need more money. I get my thrills. Like, no kidding. When I walked into your office downstairs, the thing I was so excited to see was right next on your wall is a picture of your book cover that says New York Times bestseller. Yeah. I'm so much more excited when a client has a level of success than even with our own these days.
Yeah.
Because you climb that ladder enough times and you realize it's great, and it's worth doing, but it's still, there's always, you're moving the goalpost. There's always someone bigger than you, something better. There's something, ahead. But when you help somebody succeed, it's not just it's a feeling you get. It creates context and value for your life. And I think that's what not enough people are talking about with the internet. And the other thing is, you also don't need to have millions of followers to make millions of dollars. No. One thing that the people watching this need to understand is very few people are going to be you. Very few people are going to reach millions and millions and millions. The good news is not everybody has to. It's actually it tends to be easier for the average person to make more money by serving fewer people in a deeper way, right? Than it is to serve lots of people in a very shallow way. It's like you have to, don't be so focused on the width of your reach that you overlook the depth of your impact. Because just because you have a cat video go viral and you get lots of followers, that doesn't mean that people are going to trust you and buy from you, right? Just because a lot of people are watching doesn't mean they're going to give you their money. Now, you might make money from the platforms, but even that tends to be pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
If I can serve a really small audience in a deep way, if I can be their favorite, if I can be their most trusted, if I can be the person that they look forward to consuming their post, that they don't just look in their feed, that they search my name, then I go, that person is likely to hire me. And not just buy a $20 book, but someone who might spend a few thousand to tens of thousands of dollars in a program. For most people watching, that's the actual path to get rich. It's to serve a smaller audience in a deeper way. At least I think that's the more scalable way to do this.
Give some examples of that, because I totally agree with you. And I think actually there's a lot of downsides to super big reach, which is you have to almost water down your message slightly to go so wide. And it has a direct anti-correlation to conversion, aka getting people to buy things from you. And so there's plenty of people who make way more money in their businesses with a much smaller audience set. But give some examples. What would that be?
Well, one example would be us, honestly. So, a lot of people have heard of our clients, right? Like Ed Milet and Lewis Howes and Amy Porterfield, these really amazing clients that we work with. A lot of them have millions of followers.
Yeah.
We do not.
Yeah.
Right? But we're generating multi-8 figures, and you're going, how? We only have 1,000 customers. And it's actually because of a technique that we call fractal math.
No.
Okay, we need to talk about this. Okay, so for those of you that aren't numbers people, just stick with me for a second. I'll keep it simple. Fractal math is a strategy that we teach that says 10% of your customers will invest at a level 10 times more than they just did if you give them more intimacy.
Yep.
So let's say you have 1,000 customers and a $30 product. Okay, that's $30,000 in revenue. If you said, how can we double our business? Most people would think, go get another 1,000 customers. And that's not wrong, but that is the most expensive way to double a business, because the most expensive customer is a new customer. Yeah. So it's not that you shouldn't do that, or that you can't do that, or that it doesn't work. It does work, but there's another way to do it. The other way to do it is to use fractal math. So if you had 1,000 people give you $30, fractal math says that 10% of those, which would be 100, will give you $300 if you give them a level up in intimacy. And then 10% of the, which is, by the way, that's another 30,000.
Yep.
And then 10% of those, which would be 10, would give you $3,000. And 10% of those, which would be 1, would give you $30,000. Here, you've quadrupled the revenue without a single dollar in customer acquisition cost. That's what I mean by